Hello, my imaginary friends. Today, as usual, Dutch and Maptuk are with you. Guy. On the last show, we simply did not have enough time to reveal the entire topic, because we had to delve into the very concept of culture and mythology. And today, we will take a closer look at the representation of chaos in this very culture. I think not only in the face of the declared writers, but at the beginning, according to tradition, I will read out the donations that came between streams. So, mind control is 230 rubles. Gentlemen magicians, are you planning a separate stream on the topic of the work of occult writers and occultists in general in world history? I really like the educational program about Pythagoras and Pythagoreanism. But just so that we plan it not very much, but in general, the topic is worthy and rich, and as we will have the strength, we will definitely analyze some occultist writers in addition to those we have already disassembled. Do you think we are friends of pharmacies? Well, let the person offer probably someone. In other words, we have a list of recommended literature, all sorts of interesting writers. Here. If there are forces, well, we actually know, the same Pelivan can still be selected. That is, we don't do it like that. David Lynch still needs to be selected. Here. In other words, there are, as it were, more priority, let's say, representatives of culture and philosophy. Sergei Semart, 300 rubles without messages. Beshbarmuk Bamboo, 244 rubles 27 kopecks. I love Mr. Maptuk. John Johnson. And friend Maptuk loves yours. Maptuk is your friend. Friend Maptuk loves you all, almost like Jesus. John Johnson, 230 rubles. Buenos noches Senora with Bruyas, Gracia Sporla Informaos. You're welcome. Alexander, 240 rubles. Dear magicians, when I begin to stop the internal dialogue and thoughts with my eyes closed, I begin to see the energy of blue color, which rotates in a circle and not only. What kind of phenomenon is this? Well, this is exactly the phenomenon I have never encountered, with the energy of blue color, which rotates in a circle. But in general, when suspending internal dialogue, and with other various practices of working with your consciousness, you can observe various strange things. You try to somehow stop the internal chatter with your eyes open, and look at some repeating pattern, there's just garbage on the road. It works best when you look at this carpet of fallen needles in a pine forest. Very interesting visual effects are obtained. I'll add here, I probably see something similar. I'm not sure that it's the same as yours. And what it is, and fuck knows. I have this version, but it would be difficult to check it. Perhaps this is just some kind of awareness, that is. Because I noticed that it doesn't just rotate, but this blue energy is being pumped out of something like a tunnel. Well, maybe. Maybe I see something completely different. Here. The description is difficult to understand. Mr. Creeper, 1,100 rubles, with the coverage of the Gagai Commission, to support the ether about the gods of chaos. Gentlemen magicians, the question is, perhaps, will it be possible to meet you, or see your activities in the next incarnations? We very much hope not. That with this incarnation, it will be possible to solve all your problems here and not be incarnated anymore. But looking at the current deplorable situation, I have serious suspicions that I still have to. We'll have to reincarnate here again. Yes, maybe there will be another relaxing stream, maybe an alcohol stream, with answers to questions. And there you can touch on this problem. There may be previous incarnations and the next ones. So well, I really hope that we will succeed in this incarnation. Well, if it fails, then it means it will succeed in the next incarnation. Here. Something like that. I would like everything to succeed in this. Yes. A dashing mustache, 230 rubles, for a cookie bomb for pests. Thank you. Mind control, 230 rubles. Gentlemen magicians, is it possible to say that when a good actor plays a role, his personality is replaced by a demon? Or is this explanation wrong? Is acting an example of Pelevin's necrompathy? It all depends on what kind of acting it is. Ideally, just like that, in a good way, according to the Stanislavski system, with a desire for the role, acting is shifting one's assemblage point to the position of the character the actor is playing. And then it turns out that he does not play it, he will stop with it. And therefore, it is possible to shift the assemblage point to the position of some demon, for example. Here's a very important addition. If an actor, when he plays a role, is possessed by a demon, and when this actor, as it were, lives his usual life, how does it differ? That is, his position of the assemblage point, when he plays himself. It turns out that some kind of demon has taken possession of him too. That is, if we proceed from this point of view, then yes. And if, well, anything is possible. In fact, there are really obsessed people when their assemblage point shifts, let's say, forcibly, and they do not control it. That is, most people have. In other words, can we say that they are possessed by demons? Well, probably, by the way, if you look at it from this point of view, you can say so. Well, not that demons, rather all sorts of small demons, because, yes, exactly, those, Grigory, it is demons that few people are actually possessed by. But there are such characters, for example, Renata Litvinovo. So, I hope our stream didn't drop after mentioning this name. You see, now everything has to be checked several times again. Mind control, 230 rubles. Gentlemen magicians, what is glory from the point of view of magism witchcraft? A person before gaining fame and after is two different people, as social success and popularity changes a person's assemblage point. Fame from the point of view of magism witchcraft is the same as fame from a universal point of view, when many people know about a person, and many talk about him, that is, they praise him, they talk about him. Let's just say, his personal history is richer than that of an ordinary person. Here, he can use it naturally, well, or for good, or vice versa for harm, if it is bad fame. Here, a person before gaining fame, and after that, is like touching on the same issue of personal history. Since most people do not exist, well, in the concept of exactly as a character, but exists precisely in the form of an information golem, most of which is just occupied by that very personal story, then it all depends on what kind of personal story he will draw. And if he does not control himself, then he, in fact, becomes the personal story that was drawn to him. And if it is a personal story that differs from the previous version, that is, before he gained fame, then yes, the person will change. There is also such a moment that a personal story is usually very standard. That is, it is the same set of roles, let's say, not even archetypes, but exactly roles. It's like a person playing someone. That is, before a person becomes successful, let's even take some YouTube bloggers, they look at others, at popular YouTube bloggers, yes, and try to be like them, or act like them. Well, by and large, and these bloggers, they look at who was shown on TV, and in general, they usually do not lose their lives. That is, there is a difficult moment here, why a person becomes popular, but in my opinion, he becomes popular because he meets the expectations of a bunch of poor-minded people, that is, since the absolute majority of poor-minded people, and poor-minded people have their whole personal history drawn, that is, by TV or the internet. And the last part of the question is, how does social success and popularity change a person's assemblage point? In different ways. It all depends on the person. Here is the most common case just described by a friend of Maptyuk. Gentlemen magicians is the artist in the broad sense of the word, a fisherman who hooks meanings and images from the ocean and zero, and to what extent fantasy is a reflection of real-life worlds. Well, you know, you can call anyone, including an artist, in a broad sense. You can call a fisherman who catches the hook of meaning and image. Quite myself. Here, I immediately have an association with Jesus Christ, that is, he used exactly this terminology. I will make you fishers of men. That is, probably here is a reference to this. Here, quite possibly. And how fantasy is a reflection of real worlds. As practice shows, a person can't dream up anything. All that is now called fantasy is the work of a kaleidoscope when the human mind takes some ready-made parts of experience and simply mixes them in an unusual combination. Why do I always like to say that aliens for people are such people with dog heads? However, these may be quite real measurements, let's say. Of course, we do not describe it with 100% probability, but let's say 10, 20, 30% there. Something like that. If you really dig deep, it turns out that a person really can't come up with anything so special. That is, in his basis, he either repeats what he has already seen, like this is impossible right there. Like it was forbidden on Facebook, in my opinion, to say Ukrainians or whoever, right? The Sumerians began to speak. Well, that's all human art. It's in many ways for the place of the Jews, let's say reptilians. And also in art. That is, yes, there is some kind of censorship or politeness, and therefore they come up with fantasy. That is, it is immediately noticeable. Well, this level. And it happens when visionaries really see other worlds or parallel dimensions. Here. And one more question for mind control, 230 rubles. Gentlemen magicians, is there still a stream planned dedicated to the work of Carlos Castaneda? The broadcast on this topic, The Hangers of Chaos, turned out to be somewhat blurred, which is very annoying. Well, I do not know. We are friends with Aptuk. It seems to me that there is not much point in dedicating some separate additional broadcast dedicated to the work of Carlos Castaneda. We will just make an air without a topic, where we will simply answer questions. You can ask your questions about Carlos Castaneda in the chat. We are happy to answer them. To be honest, I haven't reread his latest books lately. That's why I can forget everything there already. That is, somehow I more or less remember only that the first 2 volumes there were devoted to what he was there. Even I haven't reread these Tales of Power there for a long time either. That could be it. By the way, when I began to reread Castaneda, he no longer seemed interesting to me. That is, I read, well, damn, I know all this. And when you know something, it's no longer interesting to read. That is. From this point of view, by the way, it's quite curious to reread it, because you reread it and get, well, a certain experience. You find there those things that just passed by, and now that you're familiar with it, and like that's what it's about. Well, in the first books, I didn't find anything new for myself when I reread it. I just remember my impressions of the latest books. There's a lot of fantasy in my opinion. Maybe it's worth rereading, and really it won't seem like such a fantasy anymore. It's hard to say, that is. Well, let's just say that's where Castaneda's practices, where such a double has already developed, with the help of which all magic is possible. Unfortunately, I haven't reached this level yet, and just like that, I'm about to go to this, right? Well, not yet. And let's say there, all the most interesting things turn out there. Mind control, 230 rubles. Gentlemen magicians, is the materialization of key figures in world history, such as philosophers, scientists, and so on, who change the face of the historical process of factor planning. But usually the planning factor means that there is a certain world government that plans, and here the planning factor, I do not know. Here it is worth considering rather even from the point of view of astrology. In other words, some era begins here, and suddenly such philosophers have been trampled. Another era begins, the philosopher's hermitage is being trampled. I do not know if this can be considered a planning factor, for example. It seems to me that this is nothing more than a matter of terminology. Now, if we consider modern society, then here the planning factor plays a very important role. He has also played before, and it really can only be with the transition of astrological epochs that something new can truly arise. In other words, he is given a light, a path as it were. And these sprouts are not trampled here, because they are exactly needed, but the old ones are already. Hurry up, it just doesn't work out to trample them already. Or maybe it doesn't work out to trample. It's just that we notice, well, according to modernity, it's very clearly visible, yes, how it's not necessary to delete it all. And accordingly, it seemed to me that these are the events that are happening now. That is, I don't know what to call them. Well, you can call the Third World War. Yes, we called the Chronicles of the Third World War. I thought that all the prerequisites were created back in the 2008 year, that this would all begin. That is, 12 years have passed, just like the classic astrological cycle. That is, they may need 12 years for what is happening to be completed too. Although, as if technologically, everything has been ready for a long time, both socially and philosophically too. That is, the reality of it with this is really most likely subject to some kind of astrological cycle. Well, you know, we are friends of pharmacies. It often happens that technically everything is ready, but somehow you know it's not done. Even if you peep, it seems like everything is there, but you do some nonsense. It turns out until the right moments come. Then everything just happens by itself. I have also noticed such things many times. Well, 500 rubles with commission coverage on the animating force. Thank you. Vlad, 230 rubles. Goy Guy, thank you for the stream. Strength, good luck and health to you gentlemen magicians. Tell me why the chaos gods are good. Maybe today, we will even have time to tell you why the gods of chaos are good, although in a good way. There will be a few more preliminary broadcasts, so that it is completely clear why it is good here, and what is good and what is bad. But I advise you just to reconsider. This, our title broadcast of the Governors of Chaos, is just about the way of good. Actually, maybe you will already get part of the answer there. Well, today, I hope to. Irina of Balskare, 999 rubles, with Gui Guy commission coverage. We support the ether with intent. Gaiago. The descriptor is 230 rubles with commission coverage. Guigigi, thank you for your work, albeit with a small investment so far. And in my opinion, we read this comment on the last broadcast. I'll check it again now. So well, let's read it further, just in case I'd rather read too much. Low skill 700. I can hear you a little deafly now. Well, I am now. Now the norm. I'll finish reading it anyway. I'll flip the settings. So, the low skill is 777 rubles with commission coverage. Guigao. Guy. New Age, 230 rubles, with commission coverage. Goigea, Geoi. Alexander Inksauce, 500 rubles with commission coverage. I support with the intention of Zaga Guy, for the power of awareness. Down with the insectoids. So, Ilya DM, 230 rubles. Mr. McGee, I'm interested in your opinion about the Institute of Anthropogenesis, if you suddenly know if they are pests. Okay, but I think we've already read this. About the Institute of Anthropogenesis. I just don't know what kind of institution is meant, so I can't answer that. And we have a few more donations that have just arrived. So, the merry fellow, 230 rubles. Gentlemen magicians, what do you think about Satcher? Is achieving Satori a good goal? What do you think about slipsism? It seems to me that slipsism is one of the fundamental principles of magic. Satcher is what a state, because I don't remember well. Unfortunately, I am too. I didn't specifically study all these Oriental subtleties. Here, maybe in vain, but we have already talked about it. Yes, the problem is always in terminology, that goes through thousands of years, that is. Here, and by this, you can understand something completely different else. And so the question is kind of really meaningless. That's exactly why. That is, if I were an expert in this terminology in their non-magic, that is, I would study some teachers there here. Well, or at least I read some books there. I'm not sure that it's possible to understand everything from books. Here, and about solipsism in its modern sense, I personally think that this is a trap of the second level. That is, initially this idea was not bad. Only in the modern sense, it was shifted just in the direction of sabotage. About the fact that there is no spoon, that's all. Well, There is no spoon, but you can get it on her forehead so quite specifically. Well, by the way, yes, this is usually the most important antithesis, slipsism, let's say. Well, I treated this philosophy normally, and now, probably, I treat it normally. It's just that we really create this world, but the question here is, how much are we still not creating it? That is, and sometimes this position of the assemblage point, and this confidence that you are completely creating this world, it is positive. That's in my opinion. But again, you know, the problem here is not in any teachings, but in their misunderstanding and misinterpretation. That is, it's like everything here, everything is fine in the world. Here, some provisions. Here, as far as I remember, the trick of solipsism is that it can't be logically refuted in any particular way. That is, she is not internally contradictory. Yes, it is not an internally contradictory concept. This, well, if we proceed from the standard logic, it turns out to be a very advantageous life position. But if you know how to use it correctly, that is. And if, for example, you are charged with these ideas, and saying that let's say I'm in charge here, go out on the roadway and say, and this truck is an illusion, the truck is an illusion. Here, most likely the truck will hit you. That is, you need to move along this path quite a lot, so that you know, to say that the truck is an illusion, so that it disappears. Well, here's the thing that this matrix feeds its reality very well, that is, or maybe it starts kicking it. Well, I hope you understand my answer, and take it correctly. Here. In other words, it turns out to be such a kind of slipsism, when everything around is nothing more than your hallucination, but you do not control this hallucination. And then it turns out that it's not really your hallucination anymore. Well, yes, it turns out to be an uncontrolled schizo. That is, you need to make it controlled, then find a full recovery, where you control everything. This, by the way, is very difficult. That is why you should not set such large-scale goals, like a truck right away. It's worth starting with something smaller. To know, 2,571 rubles and 50 kopecks with commission coverage. The second stream in a row. Great. Goigea, Goigeo. By the way, I thank Dano. He always gives us quite generously. Well done. Yes, we really thank everyone who supports us in any way, even if only with a like, because even a minimal investment helps a lot in general in our activities. Take a look at this wonderful enchanted computer, which helps to overcome technical failures. About the MVs, 500 rubles, with commission coverage without messages. Drone Boris, 155 rubles 85 kopecks. Hello, have you watched the movie in Vendetta? Can Max Fry be called a chaotic hero? He fought against the government, was not afraid of death, and in the end, did not become a dragon, which he defeated. We watched the movie. You know that, great. How can I say this, when a large corporation makes a revolutionary film about Che Guevara, from which the eyes of young people light up, and she earns a lot of money on it? Like this. I watched the movie, but I almost completely don't remember it. This suggests that, well, he didn't linger in my creation. That is, I didn't remember any meaningful ideas there. Clear, I definitely watched it before, but I don't remember what. There's a very funny plot there. Society after some evil epidemic, Christian radicals rule everyone, faggots are caught, sent to camps, and in the end, it turns out that this virus was launched by Christian radicals themselves in order to arrange fascism like this. All this is happening in England. Can I have Max Fry? Only it's not Max Fry. It's, in my opinion, the writer Max Fry. And there's Guy Fawkes, this one in the mask who was. Well, I set it off normally, arranged it, so to speak, made a rustle. Karl Stolz, 913 rubles 10 kopecks. We go. That's it, we've read all the donations that came in between streams. Yes, there were quite a few of them, already 26 minutes. Here. So you can forget about the gods of chaos already. Yes, let's move smoothly to the gods of chaos. I suggest that we generally start this time more from afar than about the same Lovecraft or Warhammer 40,000, and remember a little about Sumerian ancient Egyptian mythology, well, at least about what is now meant by them, and those remnants that have come down to us. In ancient Sumerian mythology, again, if I'm not confusing anything, the creation of the world consisted in the fact that a part of reality was taken away from the ancient such Hatonic, chaotic deity Tiamat, and actually created this reality itself. I just don't remember who, as usual, some kind of Enki. No, it's a different story. At least this is the classic one. Well, at least from what is known, what myths are known on this topic, what kind of tablets are there? I'm afraid to forget the whole intrigue a little bit now, but the point is that these are the main deities, that is, those who created the world, first of all Tiamat. At some point there, in my opinion, there were several stages at all. But in short, this is the most recent stage, that is, these younger gods who were fucking there, began to distract the higher deities too much, that is, how they made noise, ran around, asked, demanded, that is, fuck. In short, well, it got in the way. Well, they just got in the way, they fucked up, in short, the supreme deity gets something, and they decided to eliminate them, in short, a little bit of it. Here. And there, too, battles took place in several stages, and it really ended with the fact that Tiamat was dismembered. The world was created from it, and in my opinion, from the blood of King, who was the commander of Tiamat. They created Ludics, that is, they plowed them to work. That's actually, that is initially, that is, people are the service personnel of the gods, created from, so to speak, the warlord Tiamat. Well, from his blood, let's say. And by the way, there is something similar in ancient Egyptian mythology, too. It came in a fragmented form, and there seem to be several variants of different schools, but it can also be traced that there were some older gods, that our reality was created from some primordial chaotic waters, from which the first arose dry land. And if you look around in all the more or less ancient gizmos that have come down to us, there you can find this repeating, like a repeating story, a repeating scheme, that our whole world was initially, as it were, torn away from something much larger and more serious. And not even just torn off once and for all, but in fact, there is a constant war for its preservation. And this reminds me of the terminology of Carlos Castaneda, that there is a kind of big nagual, a huge ocean of consciousness, and on which there is a human tonal, which represents our entire reality, what is usually considered to be under it, as a small, small dot. Well, here you can still remember the ancient Greek myths, but I remember them much better, that is, everything depends on the generations of the gods there, that is, Gaia, who is just, well, the main deity, that is, initially, that is her, she gave birth to Uranus, that is, Uranus married her, as it were, and she gave birth to just these all titans there, and other cool guys. Here accordingly, but since Uranus did not like these children, he pushed them inside Tartarus, that is, well, maybe he was afraid of competition, or somehow I don't remember how this is explained from Greek myths. Well, yes, that is, somehow they were too fast, ugly, that is, they were saved up in Tartarus, and Tartarus is also part of the traffic police, like, and it was kind of hard for her to have these kids for herself, and she persuaded Saturn there to cut off the Papisca and Uranus, and accordingly, Saturn ruled after that. And this is considered, by the way, the Golden Age, well, at least in Greek mythology. But Saturn ate his own children, that is, just to be afraid that he would also be pushed off. But as a result of intrigues, they still managed to save one cub there, feed him a stone, so that he was deceived, and accordingly. Then there was a battle with Saturn, that is Zeus. That's what I don't remember anymore. I soaked Saturn. Then they soaked these titans, but they didn't soak them. They, in my opinion, banished them somewhere even lower than. Oh yes, yes. By the way, yes, so first Zeus in alliance with these titans soaked Saturn. Then they had another war, that is, between the Olympian gods and these titans. And after these, yes, titans as it were exiled to Tartarus too. Well, after that, as if Zeus rules, that's something like that. Here, let's say, the main mythology of the Greek myth turns out that this is such a power struggle between generations. That is, and as if the new generation wins, as if the older one. At the same time, it is believed that people actually lived better before. But here, by the way, you can recall the Indian one. Everything is also about the same degree there. And the main thing is how to say it. Aryan, not Aryan, but this. That's where Thor is. There's Frey. Scandinavian? Yes, in Scandinavian. Everything there came from the first man and the world, who was also killed, dismembered, and the world was created from him. In other words, this idea of the dismemberment of some previous deity, and the previous order, and the creation of the world, and partly man from it, it is, as you know, the main archetype in fact, one way or another, to one degree or another, is present in all myths. Here, by the way, I wasn't going to touch on this topic, daughter, you touched on it. It turns out that, how to say it, you can imagine it as the gods of chaos in human culture, as from ancient times to the present day. Yes, yes, that is, well, what can I say? Here, in my opinion, in Sumerian, there everything is the most somehow close and logical. That is, because imagine, yes, that you have created the world, and every poor-minded person distracts you all the time. Like he will do this, I will do that. Here. That is, like this. And I don't see, let's say, anything wrong with these deities, especially since people, according to the same myth, carry a charge of just these deities of chaos, who were simply plowed by the same offspring of the gods of chaos. Only here they, let's say, won a small victory. Here. Well, I wasn't really prepared for this kind of reasoning. I do not know, daughter, tell me what you wanted to say about this, and I will comment on it somehow, because I want to say, on the one hand, I want to say that with each subsequent epoch, the scale of mythology and man in general is getting smaller and smaller. Because compare these old myths, the same Sumerian myth, later myths, they are already smaller. And what is happening there now in the same Archimera? This is generally the swarming of some small frog. By the way, indeed, the same Miguel Cyrano noted this, that when this historical cycle begins, I connect it with Saturn in the first place. That is, when this program was launched, this archetype, or rather this most important myth, the most important basic myth, when it was launched, of this confrontation, so it is on each new circle, that the whole of humanity is getting smaller and degrades. Smaller and degrades. With each new epoch, the chimney is thinner, and the smoke is shorter, and everything is simplified and degraded. It becomes simpler, but it repeats the plot of this original myth. Only things are getting worse and worse. That is, as if the real Goe force of this world disappears, and its remnants are scrolled once again. As in my opinion this evil sorcerer Burkev, he had such an idea in some program, that this power or awareness can be represented as ore, and with each new stage of development. They worked out once, then the ore became impoverished. They choose even more carefully. The next time there is less ore, and you will follow each one. These glitches on YouTube have already fucked up a little, so let's continue where we left off. A friend of the pug. Are you sure you can hear us? Well, at least the monitors show me. The stream has started. The monitors show that everything should be audible. We were interrupted at the moment when friend Maptuk gave an analogy with the endless remining of ore. When the most delicious pieces are taken out of it first, then the spent slag is processed again and again and again, each time extracting less ore and leaving more and more empty rock. And I gave an analogy with tea, with a tea bag, which are brewed over and over again and get more and more liquid tea. By the way, Saturn is working with this mechanism of infinite production, and it does not act consciously. That is, he is the god of zombies, who has just been plowed into doing this stuff. But this? Well, probably yes, after all, in the subject of this conversation. Here. Let's probably move on to modern art altogether, just like you wanted to say something about it. About creativity specifically. No, you already. No, you wanted to. Well, in the beginning, you said that you weren't going to start so far away, and scrolled through some other thoughts in your head. Let's maybe move on to them. Yes, directly. Then what is chaos? Of course, we will talk about it in more detail on other streams, but it is necessary to talk about it here, just to understand what is wrong and heresy of this ordinary human mythology, where they have a perception error closed there, let's say. Well, first of all, this is how I see chaos. It is primarily development, that is, progress, and limitless opportunities.
В первую очередь, вот как я вижу хаос, это в первую очередь именно развитие, то есть прогресс и безграничные возможности.
You can call it freedom. Here. If we recall the same Warhammer, there are those who worship the gods of chaos. They begin to mutate. And what is a mutation? This is development. That is a change in literal translation. The change is true, but the change is real. It can be both negative and positive. And in this case, it is impossible to compare chaos, let's say, just with some kind of life-giving radiation, which in small doses gives some kind of plus, but in large doses, everything can simply die out. No, it's really about awareness. That is, here it's probably worth taking a look, but what is the order from the point of view? Because it is chaos that is opposed to order, and order is opposed to chaos. From my point of view, this is one major, even basic mistake. That is, they are trying to divide it into two chairs again. From my point of view, order is just part of chaos. Here. The only problem is that, well, at least. Well, not at least, but actually, it is in human civilization, and in the human social structure, that there is such a thing, that when some kind of hierarchy has already been formed, and accordingly, some kind. You can call it an order, although it's just some kind of hierarchy. She always wants to keep her position. In other words, those who are at the very top want to maintain their position. And any economic, political, or social changes are dangerous for them. If this is just an example to give our modernity, then let's imagine there is a plant manager. That is, let's say 20,000 people work there at the plant. Here, well, they work, produce something, receive subsidies from the state. You can cut something there, steal something. Well, in general, the head of the plant, and he has 20,000 people under his command, but he's a pretty cool dude. And then a new technology appears, where you can make the same plant, that will produce the same products. Well, there will need 10 engineers there and no more. Here. What do you think? Will the head of a plant for 20,000 people interfere with the conduct of technology, where 10 people will produce the same thing? Of course it will. Here, and he is not the only one, because he has already formed connections back and forth. There are papals, contracts with a bunch of others. Well, and politicians, and public figures and other things. And all of them are not interested in conducting new technologies. That's shorter. And you can call it just like that, a degrading order. Again, if we take the Warhammer universe as an example, there is such a thing that this Imperium does not develop. It only degrades technically. In other words, they have the coolest thing there that they have. These, in my opinion, are some kind of template constructions that were left over from dark eroticism when there were technologies, and that's it. In other words, the ultimate coolness is to get these old schemes somewhere and do something with them. In other words, this is the highest value. They don't do anything new. They fly on ships that are 10, 20, 40,000 years old there, and they are considered the coolest because they are created here. That is, at the same time, it is directly prohibited by techno-priests. That is, they have such a new regulation in their religion that it is a terrible heresy to invent something new yourself. For this they are instantly punished. And in general, even the very attempt to understand how and what works is also a certain heresy. You just need to look for standard drawings and pray on them. Literally. And literally. In other words, I really like the Empire here. He shows human society very well. That's exactly what's frozen in a senile order. But it exists only at the expense of just. You know that. Let's just say, we are friends of pharmacies. Here again, returning to my analogy from the previous stream, everything looks very much like a mechanical watch. In other words, the order in the modern view is such a mechanical clock, where the same thing repeats over and over again. In other words, it can be quite difficult to describe the same thing with some 10-story formulas, but the most important thing is the endless repetition of the same thing. At the same time, the clock mechanism itself is slowly being developed and begins to degrade. Well, the classic Saturn. Here. And yes, indeed, we see that, at least in human society, yes, this is an ossified order, and when there is too much order, but it simply dies off, because without development, life is impossible. In other words, life a priori is a development a priori. Well, here it is, that is, it is possible, not just possible, but really put for equality between chaos and development. Here. Moreover, this development is not only scientific, it is also biological, and social, and magical, you could even say so. Just this one, as my friend Dud said, that chaos is an equal probability of everything. In other words, this is exactly the maximum degree of freedom here. And can we say that too much freedom will be bad, and we will all, in short, die? This roughly reminds me of these scarecrows that new technologies are about to develop, and there will be 99% of the unemployed. But actually the ones that, imagine that, but unemployed, they will simply occupy other niches. We are friends with Aptu. They will build looms, and a bunch of these wonderful weavers will be left without work and will starve to death. So we need to go and burn these demonic machines. By the way, in all seriousness, that is, I remember at school we went through it. How are they? Luddites, I think they were called, who broke cars in England. And in short, it was served a little like this: well, here are some fools. And now I hear it from all the irons, about the same thing, this neoludism. That is, progress is evil. That is, well, it will be completely fucked up. Well, there's also a problem with the fact that they strive to give out every fucking laboratory for progress. And this is a separate topic. Since you just remembered it now, you can now disassemble it right away. The fact is that really since the beginning of the last century, everyone has been talking a lot about development, progress, etc., and so on. Revolution, Tadusha, and all such development. And in fact, you see, all these conversations have come down to the same thing that has always been. Well, in words one thing, but in fact another. Here. And this is precisely the mistake of humanity, let's say, a social one, to put, let's say, just development and progress on a pedestal and say something, here we are for progress, we are for development. No, we are not just for development, not just for progress, we are for chaos. And part of the chaos, it is also responsible for development and progress, because, well, like butter, and what is it, right? In other words, there can be no development without freedom, and there are a lot of such moments, which I hope I can partially explain today. It's just that I want to repeat the thesis that I spoke about on the last broadcast, and just on this thesis the ether hung all the time, that chaos can have an unlimited number of definitions. Here, and we have to choose some main thing. Here is the movement of Gigai. One of the main definitions of chaos for himself defines it as development. Well, you can call it development, progress in all relations, including biological ones, by the way. In other words, we need to develop in all directions. Here, well, in the same Warhammer, it seems to show that chaos is a very aggressive environment, where everyone is at war with each other, and everyone is against everyone. By the way, the Imperium is also there in the same way. Well, there it is explained by the fact that it is a reflection of the human world. In other words, they brought this eternal war with them into chaos, because initially it was nothing, and they pull out of this chaos what is closest to them. A very proper addition, a very proper addition. Here it really is. That is, chaos gives you opportunities for development. And how do you use them? If you are a poor-minded person yourself, or are obsessed with just various sins, then they will come out first of all. And plus, it also depends on awareness, that is here. That's what I don't like about Warhammer in this case. That is, all the Hussites are shown there as such obsessive scumwits. On the other hand, if the energies of chaos are really extended to the majority of people, even people, they are really poor-minded. They will really start creating some kind of game, and, having received opportunities, they will spend them in a poor-minded way, that is. They will create all sorts of game. That's really what it is. But even so, it will still be better than stagnation and death. But naturally. Well, just like that, at least there are chances, but in case of stagnation, there are simply no chances. But, if it doesn't work out for this transfer, here's a very important nuance. Here is the game that the Khassis create in the Warhammer universe, and such game that people can create in our universe. These are not their exclusive problems. This is only because they are insufficiently developed and, by and large, poorly intelligent. That is, it is not their lack of intelligence that creates a distorted perception for them. And in fact, what is chaos? This is, first of all, development. And there can't be much of this development. There may be little of it, but there cannot be much of it. Because life itself is an endless development. Here is the only such moment that this development, it also goes through conflicts, through war. And this is also inevitable, because the one who has the power, he is not interested in changes. And these changes may not always occur, as if, let's say, evolutionarily. That is, very often, they are the result of conflict. And maybe conflict in many cases even gives a faster development than some kind of gradual competition. Let's note that the technical leap is connected with the world wars. That is, each war gave a very big jump, an impetus to the development of everything, that is technology and... Especially the Second World War. There's a lot of space technology, jet planes, all these computers and other such crap. Yes,
Да, и как
and
мы
as we
понимаем,
understand
то
it, the
переход в
transition to the next
следующий
stage of
этап развития,
development
скорее всего,
is
опять
likely to
будет
be
через
through the
войну.
war again. Well,
Ну,
for a
по
lot
очень
of
многим
reasons.
причинам.
Here,
Вот.
here
Тут
again,
вот еще
we
раз
can
можно
mention this
упомянуть
demagogy, which
вот
various
эту вот
modern
демагогию,
politicians
которую
use and have
употребляют
used.
и
That is,
употребляли
speaking about development,
различные
progress,
политики, вот
evolution,
современные, то есть
revolution.
говоря про
In
развитие,
fact,
прогресс,
they really are
эволюцию,
demagogy.
революцию. А, По факту они вот действительно есть демагогия.
In other
То есть
words,
вот хаос
chaos is
это
not
не
demagoguery,
демагогия,
it is practice.
это
That
практика.
is,
То есть
it
это
really
на
is.
самом деле вот
But, if we talk about
если
chaos
говорить о магии
magic,
хаоса,
what
то
is it in
это
the
в
first
первую
place?
очередь.
First of
В
all,
первую
it is the
очередь это
transfer
именно
of the scientific approach.
перенос научного
That is,
подхода.
and the
Вот, а научный
scientific
подход
approach is
довольно
quite
правильный.
correct. Here, the problem is
Проблема в
that
том,
now
что
there is
сейчас
no scientific
научного
approach
подхода
among
нет
these same scientists
среди
themselves.
самих вот этих же научников.
Because
Потому
it is
что
impossible
нельзя
to give her
какую-то
some
новую
new
теорию
theory
дать
how to
ей
say the way, yes, if all the
дорогу,
academics have
да,
already
если
defended
уже все
themselves and are sitting,
академики
let's say, in their places.
защитились и сидят, скажем так, на своих местах.
In other
То есть,
words,
если будет
if there is
какая-то
some
новая
new
научная
scientific
идея,
idea,
они
they will
потеряют свой
lose their
авторитет
authority
или
or
должны
will
будут
have to share
поделиться
their
своим
authority
авторитетом
and
и
financial, most
финансовыми,
importantly,
главное,
opportunities
возможностями
with some
с
new
какими-то
people.
новыми людьми.
Here,
Вот.
well, there
Ну,
are of
много,
course
конечно,
many other
всяких причин
reasons.
еще.
Well, by
Ну
the
вот,
way,
кстати, во
during
время
the
войны
war,
очень часто
very
этих
often these
академиков
academics
быстренько
are quickly
пододвигают,
pushed
потому
because
что
everyone is
все
focused on the
нацелены
result.
именно на результат.
And not once
Причем
there
не
later,
когда-то там
but right
потом, а
now,
прямо
and
сейчас,
so that it
чтобы
works.
работало.
Justifiably,
Обосновано
this is
это
somehow
как-то
scientifically
по-научному,
unreasonable.
необоснованно, вообще
No
никому
one is
не
interested in
интересно.
it at all. Yes,
Да, и
and
поэтому,
therefore,
если вот
if we consider the gods of
богов
chaos
хаоса
as
как
some kind of
таких
agents of
вот,
war, it is in many ways correct.
агентов
But
войны,
again, this is
во
war.
многом правильно.
This is
Но
again a
опять же, эта
consequence
война
of
это
human
также следствие
stupidity, the
скудоумия
stupidity of
человечества,
human
скудоумия
society.
человеческого общества.
In other
То есть
words,
это значит,
this means
что
that
деградация
degradation has
зашла
gone
так
so
далеко,
far that, in
что
addition
кроме
to destruction,
уничтожения,
or rather destruction and direct conflict,
что вернее
this is the most
уничтожение и
adequate for
прямой
the
конфликт
development of action, let's say.
это
Here,
наиболее адекватное для развития действия, скажем так.
but
Вот.
this does
Но это
not
не
mean
значит, что
that
хаос
chaos
именно
brings
вот
war,
несет
and war for the
войну
sake
и
of
войну
destruction,
ради разрушения,
destruction for the
разрушения
sake of
ради
destruction.
разрушения.
Fucked up
Пиздец
is
это
blood for the god of
кровь для
blood,
бога
a
крови,
throne
трон
for
для
skulls.
черепов.
Well, it looks
Ну,
like
это
this.
похоже так это.
Although such
Хотя
a
такая
situation is
ситуация
really
действительно
possible,
возможна, потому
because
что
if the scudam hear the
если
gods of
скудоумцы
chaos,
услышат богов
that is,
хаоса, то
they are
они,
likely to
скорее
receive some
всего,
energy.
получат какие-то энергии.
Here, for
Вот,
example,
например,
I can say
вот из
from my
своей практики
practice
могу
that
сказать,
if a
что
poor-minded
вот если
person
скудоумец
receives some amount
получает
of
какое-то
gui
количество
power,
гуй
his
силы,
aggressiveness
у него
wildly
дико
increases.
повышается агрессивность.
That is here.
Вот.
Accordingly, without control
Соответственно, без
and, well, that
контроля,
is over another
то
force,
есть,
then really
гуй
here
силы
is such a
это
desire
действительно
to
вот
go
такое
to
желание
someone this
дать
very
кому-то
thing.
это
That
самое,
is,
то есть
aggressive behavior is
агрессивное
unconscious.
поведение несознательное.
That is,
То есть вот,
there is, let's
допустим,
say, here is
даже
the
вот
same kind of energy.
некроэнергия,
If the
если да,
date
то
with where the mind
скудоумец
is
начитается, у него
saturated, he
начинает
really starts
немножко
to go a
крыша
little
ехать,
crazy.
действительно.
Although,
Хотя
this is exactly such a
это именно
social,
такая
socially, as it were, also
социальная,
developing this
как
social
бы тоже
development.
развивающая вот это вот социальное
That is,
развитие. То есть, да,
yes,
то
that
есть,
is.
а так как
And since a
человек
person is
социальное
a social
существо,
being,
да, и
yes,
если он
and if he is a
скудоумец, то
poor-minded
социальное
person,
развитие
then he can
только
only
может
direct this
направить
social
в полную
development,
крышу.
that he will go crazy. Here I
Здесь
remember this
вспоминаю вот
movement
это
of the
движение в
Shoops.
семье ППШ.
Here,
Вот.
and huge.
И огромное,
I wanted to
хотел
say it
это
later,
попозже говорить,
but
но
since
раз
I
уж вспомнил,
remembered,
скажу.
I'll tell you. That's the
Вот в
problem
чем
with most
проблема
chaos magicians, who, well,
э,
sometimes I look, let's
большинства
say, on
магов
the internet
хаоса,
on this topic,
которые,
that
ну,
people write,
иногда
and they
я
have some
посматриваю,
kind of
скажем так, в
perception that you
интернете
need to go
на эту
crazy,
тему,
that is, give your
что они
humanity to the
пишут.
chaos
И
gods there,
у них
create
какое-то
all sorts of
восприятие
game,
такое, что
well, in short, get off
нужно
crazy,
вот сходить с
and so it's
ума,
better
то
to
есть
perceive how to
отдать
say
свое
a message from the
человечество богам
gods of
хаоса,
chaos,
творить всякую
or it's better
дичь.
to get in touch with
Ну,
them.
короче,
It
сойти
may
с
be
ума.
so. Maybe it's really
И
better for
таким
contact to be,
образом
but what are you going to
лучше
do with it then?
воспринимать, как сказать, послание от богов хаоса или лучше вступить с ними в контакт. Оно так-то может быть и так. Может быть, это и лучше действительно для контакта будет. Но что ты потом с этим будешь делать?
That is,
То есть,
if
если бы у
Yelkin's
нас
grandson
внук
had won
Елькина
and
победил
become
и стал
president
президентом,
here,
вот,
and all the
и
crazies like
всем
this
шизам, как
are
это
expensive
самое,
everywhere, then maybe such a
везде
position
дорога,
would be
то,
adequate.
может быть,
But
такая
unfortunately,
позиция
this is
была бы
not the case in
адекватной.
many respects. That
Но, к
is,
сожалению, это по многим параметрам не так. То есть,
instead of
Они
stopping
вместо
their
того,
mind,
чтобы
they start
остановить
destroying
свой
it.
ум, начинают его разрушать.
That is,
То есть
it
это
is
тоже,
also, of
конечно,
course, a way way of setting the
постановки
mind,
ума, но...
but
А,
here's the
тут
moment.
вот какой момент.
It is control that is needed, that is, it is the person himself, his will must prevail in all these processes. That is, sometimes you can of course go with the flow as it were, but when it comes to strength and some kind of information like this, everything especially needs to be under control. Because, well, it's easy to go crazy, much easier than then returning from a crazy state to normal. And now, unfortunately, many chaos magicians simply do not understand this here, or maybe they don't have any experience anymore, because that's a lot of what I'm talking about now, and criticizes this position. In fact, 10 or 12 years ago, I was mistaken in many ways in the same way. That is, I even criticize myself, because you can really understand all these subtleties only with experience. And as if this is the main value that I share with you, that the main thing is you, that is, and the same thing. You can't give up humanity just like that. We need to understand what humanity is. In other words, in terms of Carlos Castaneda, there is such a concept of the human form, although it is not exactly the same, but there is some kind of similarity. It is necessary to realize the human form, that is, what is of itself. It is necessary to know yourself first of all, and to know yourself, including as a person. And when you already know what you really want, that's when you can already communicate with the gods of chaos. And if you have some false ideas, that is, imposed not on you, but on various egregors and golems, well, first of all, you don't need it. And from the point of view of the chaos gods, you don't seem to exist. There are these obsessive programs. And why should the house gods communicate with the content programs? But they can, of course, communicate, but then the result will be the same as in the Warhammer universe. Here, well, either in the works of Howard Phillips Lovecraft, because his main character, as a rule, either goes crazy, or dies, or kills himself from contact with the otherworldly. That is, his tone is unable to withstand contact with the gods of chaos. And in general, when he looked at them a little during his visionary experiments, he was, let's say, horrified. This is clearly noticeable in his books. So well, it seems that what I wanted to say, it seems that I said, maybe I forgot something, even more than I forgot. But again, we will be guided by your questions. By the way, I would like most of all to have questions on the topic. Unfortunately, there were very few questions on the topic last time. Here, and somehow try to do it anyway, even if you doubt whether it's worth asking a question, but it's better to ask it on the topic. Here, let me now read out the donations that have come to us. Oj, 333 rubles. Thank you for the fundamental information. Face, 1,000 rubles with commission coverage. Goigeo. Low skill, 333 rubles with commission coverage. Let's concentrate our intentions even more, friends. The insectoids won't pass. Low skill, 444 rubles with commission coverage. Guy. Let's support the stream with intent and break the resistance of the matrix. Goy. Alexander, 240 rubles. Hello, gentlemen magicians. To the answer about the blue energy, from Mr. Uptuk. I also see her going off in bundles, to no one knows where. Funny guy, 230 rubles. Goiga, gentlemen magicians. So, well, what do you think about the achievement of Saturn? We have already voiced this. Let's switch to chat now. I'll rewind it to the very beginning, and see what they told us here.
И посмотрим, что нам тут рассказали.
Gentlemen magicians, to the question of the degradation of myths, there is an opinion that there have been 5 times in the history of the earth, angelic, ghost-like, Lemurians, Atlantans, and the 5th race, this is the current humanity. With each new race, there was an increasing degradation and materialization, but we even know where this opinion was first voiced, this is Blavatsky. And it seems to me that it is impossible to trust here. That is, there is a lot of heresy there, unfortunately. Moreover, I consider Blavatsky to be the agent, let's say, of these very Lemurians, with whom we are, as it were, not well. from which I
от
think
которых я
that the
вот
main
считаю, что
harm
главный
here
вред вот
is the
теперешней
current
цивилизации,
civilization
да, где
actually exists. Gentlemen
Господа
magicians,
маги, а
and if
если
the structure of the
устройство
Russian
РФ
Federation
стоит на том,
insists that
чтобы
nothing
ничего не
changes,
менялось, то
then it is the opposite of
противоположность хаосу,
chaos. The structure of
устройство
any
вообще
current
любого
education in general,
всеобщего
not only
образования, не
state
только
education,
государственного,
is
стоит на
based on
том,
the
чтобы
fact
ничего не
that nothing
менялось.
changes. Well, in the Russian Federation,
Ну, в
this
РФ
is,
это,
let's
скажем
say,
так,
the most
наиболее
noticeable. In
заметно.
other
То есть
words,
здесь вот
here the
процесс
process of
деградации
degradation is observed with the fall
наблюдается
of the
с падением
Soviet Union,
Советского
and in
Союза. И на
fact,
самом деле
the
Советский
Soviet
Союз
Union
очень
has
быстро
degraded in the
деградировал.
same way. In other words, the degradation
Процесс
process
деградации
has
еще
simply
ускорился.
accelerated. Resources just
Ресурсов
became
просто
less,
стало
and the most
поменьше, и
important
самое
thing
главное,
was that the
выработали
main one
основной,
was developed. How to say it?
так
An
сказать,
ideological
идеологический
resource.
ресурс.
In
То
other
есть
words,
перестали
they
верить во
stopped
всякие
believing in
старые
all these old
идеологемы, а
ideologies,
новые
and the new
совсем
ones
уж
are
больно
quite
примитивные.
painfully primitive. I want to
Только
say
хочу
that
сказать, что
chaos
хаос
is
это развитие
development in
именно по
all
всем
directions,
направлениям.
that is,
То
in
есть
general,
вообще
in
по
all.
всем.
First of
В
all,
первую
it is
очередь
most
для
important
нас
for us
наиболее
to have our
важно
magical capabilities.
свои магические
That
возможности,
is,
то есть
increasing
повышение
one's
своей
freedom and
свободы и
increasing one's
повышение
will
своей
by
воли,
controlling
контроль над
oneself.
самим
In
собой.
other
То есть
words,
это на
it is
самом деле
actually a
база.
base.
Кстати,
By the way,
Кстати,
here is the question of wool.
вопрос о
I
воле, я
remembered that
вспомнил,
this one,
что
what's his name?
как же его
The English
величие,
spy is what's his name Crowley. Crowley. Here he is
вот
too,
он тоже
in
вот
this he is right,
в
saying
этом
that
он
will is the
прав,
most
говоря,
important
что
thing,
воля самое
but as
главное,
always a
но
lot of sabotage.
как всегда куча вредительств.
That is,
То
I
есть
consider
вот
the Crowleyans to be heretics
я
after all. That is,
считаю
the fact that they
краулианцев
use the
все-таки
concept of
еретиками. То есть
chaos,
вот и
it only
то, что
harms.
они используют концепцию хаоса, это только вредит.
There are a large
Есть
number of such, you know,
большое
sincerely
количество
deluded
таких, знаешь,
people,
искренне
who remind me of
заблуждающихся, вот,
anarchists and
которые
punks
мне
there,
напоминают
that is, who are
анархистов,
really
там,
considered.
там и панков, то есть которые вот действительно считают
We all need to fall into
всем нам нужно
madness,
впасть в
so we will
безумие,
know the gods
так
of
мы познаем
chaos.
богов
But the
хаоса. Но
easiest
проще всего
way
впасть в
is to
безумие,
fall into madness,
нажраться
get drunk
китайских
on Chinese
наркотиков
drugs,
и
and
где-то
somewhere
там,
like
знаешь,
that,
за год
you know,
вот,
in a year of using
употребления
them,
действительно
everyone
сойдут
will
с ума,
really go crazy.
но от
But
этого,
from
знаете
this,
ли,
you
к
know,
богам хаоса
they
ближе,
probably
скорее всего,
won't
не
get
станут.
closer to the gods of chaos.
То
I'll
есть
have to take
придется
some pills.
пить какие-то пилюли
That's the result.
в итоге.
To this.
Чтобы это,
Oh, here,
вот,
here, here.
очень
A very good
хорошее
comparison that I
сравнение,
wanted to
которое я
make.
хотел провести.
In other
То
words,
есть я
I
вот
compare
этих
these
вот
Hussites
хасидов,
here, who are for this,
которые
for the destruction of everything human, for the
за это,
destruction
за
of the human
разрушение
mind,
всего
and the
человечества,
creation of
за
every kind of
разрушение
game,
человеческого
with the
ума,
communists who made the
творение
same
всякой
mistake.
дичи, я их сравниваю с коммунистами, которые такую же ошибку совершали.
In other
То
words,
есть,
to build communism,
чтобы построить
let's abolish
коммунизм,
money.
давайте отменим деньги.
That is,
То есть
they
это
confuse
они
cause and
путают причину
effect.
и следствие.
That is, the gods
То
of
есть
chaos
боги
are outside
хаоса
the human
вне
mind.
человеческого
Therefore,
ума.
in order to
Поэтому,
understand
чтобы
them
правильно
correctly,
понять,
you
нужно
need to
выйти
go
за эти
beyond these
границы.
boundaries. But
Но
before you go
прежде чем
beyond these
выйти за
boundaries,
эти
you need to
границы,
clearly
нужно эти
see these
границы
boundaries
четко
and
увидеть,
realize them in
вообще
general.
осознать.
And, just
И
due to the
просто
fact
за счет того,
that
что все
everyone
будут
will go
сходить с
crazy,
ума, они
they will
ближе к
not get
богам
any
хаоса
closer
нифига
to the
не
gods of
станут.
chaos.
То
So
есть
it's
это
quite a,
довольно
you
такое,
know,
знаешь, случайное
random
распределение.
distribution. The same thing
То
as
же
the
самое, как
communists
и
put there.
коммунисты
That's
ставят там
especially their
какие-нибудь
halfpenny and so
полковники и
on.
прочее.
In
То
other
есть
words, the economy should not develop in
и
such a
экономика
way
должна
that
так
the
развиться,
capitalist
что
economy will become inefficient,
капиталистическая
because
экономика
everyone
станет
will have
неэффективной,
everything,
потому что у всех
everyone
все
will be
будет,
rich
все и так
anyway,
будут богатыми,
right?
да?
And therefore money
Поэтому
will lose
деньги
its value.
теряют свое значение.
And we will
А
cancel
мы
the
отменим
money,
деньги,
fuck,
блядь, и у
and we
нас
will have a fucking
появится
communism there right away,
коммунизм,
a fucking
охуенная такая
economy and
экономика и
development.
развитие.
But it's just
Ну это
not
вот
seeing these
просто не
things
видеть
here,
вот этих
it's
вот
necessary
вещей,
to
это
be a
нужно быть
complete
полным
halfwit.
доумством.
That is,
То
by
есть, по
and
большому
large,
счету,
as I consider
как
such
вот таких
poor-minded
вот судоумных
communists to
коммунистов
be
я считаю
fools who
дурачками,
do not
которые
really
не понимают
understand
на самом
even their
деле
own
своих этих
classics.
классиков.
Here,
Вот.
I feel the
Точно
same
так
way
же я
about
и
these chaos
отношусь
magicians,
вот
who are
к
really
этим
trying to put the cart
магам
before the
хаоса, которые вот
horse.
действительно пытаются поставить телегу впереди лошади.
Here,
Вот.
nothing good
Ничего
will come of
хорошего из
this,
этого,
of
естественно,
course.
не выйдет.
Well, the
Вот
magic
магия
of chaos
хаоса
today is
сегодня
more
чаще
often
соотносится
correlated
с
with homosexuality.
гомосексуализмом.
It's kind of
Это
worth it
как
for
бы
that.
стоит за
Roly,
это,
it is worth
стоит
thanking the
благодарить
roof
за
for
это
this.
Кроуля.
That is,
То есть,
instead of doing what he likes,
вместо того,
he
чтобы
invented such
заняться тем,
complex
что ему нравится,
ideological
выдумывал такие
justifications. That is,
сложные идеологические оправдания. То есть,
well, let's
Ну,
say,
допустим,
yes,
да, мы все
we all
начнем
start to
заниматься
engage in
гомосексуализмом,
homosexuality,
и что,
and that we
магия
will
станет
become a
богом
god of
хаоса за
chaos
счет
due to
этого.
this there, here, or
Вот,
we'll
или
start
начнем
destroying graves there, fire, shit, there are corpses and all that. That is, and what, will we get closer from this? No way. This is just the classic mistake that all scant-minded people make. Naturally, the poor-minded, well, they can arrange such a game when they contact the gods of chaos. I hope that the gods of chaos will not pay any attention to them, but on the other hand, maybe they will, just for fun, because the gods of chaos like to joke. Here, and in principle, if the gods of chaos tell someone, there is shit there from the Kudomskikov, and thus achieve enlightenment, but let them eat shit can really be, that is for them it will be the right way. There you go. For me, it is primarily the development of one's own will and freedom, that is development. Here, the problem, of course, is that they also interfere with us here. Who is interfering and why? I don't know if I have the strength to tell you today, but you already know what the insectoids are, and what forces they should be identified there. Let's see. Maybe it will be possible to disassemble. Gentlemen magicians, how is it possible to constructively interact with the gods of chaos without side effects, in the form of aggression and other things? First of all, you need to put your mind in order. That is, patch up all the holes, clean out malware, study what works and how it works for you. After that, learn how to control the flow of energy. This basic level, without which there is nowhere else. Moreover, even this basic level is considered a very, very serious achievement at the current time. So I immediately think, yes, let's say, the gods of chaos give knowledge of how to, well, drive a car, or fix some kind of carburetor or power plant that is electric. Here, and a poor-minded person, without reading some instructions or not understanding, will start poking a stick into the socket there, or pressing something on the car, cutting it off. Well, of course he will not succeed, and on the contrary, he will kill himself, because such knowledge is super dangerous, including. That is, and here really is such a vulnerability of thinkers. Here, on the other hand, it is really impossible to restrict someone's freedom. There are scant-minded people who want to contact the gods of chaos, let them contact. Here, but here's a request to differentiate us. That is why I would like to. I'm sure there are of course such sensible hollits, well, except for us somewhere, but it's just that I haven't really met them. If I meet, but I'm sure there is, because as if the chaos boogie really paid attention to our reality, and naturally contact. Now I'm just not going to touch on this in more detail, but, for me it's a fact and noticeable. Only here. You see, if there was any other kind of movement, I would rather join it than create my own. Here, but in this case, there are too many things that I don't like about other, let's say, magicians who are in contact with chaos. In my opinion, they are there. I also went through these mistakes, but for a long time, let's say. That's apparently they need some time to pass, to fill some bumps, not to go completely crazy, that's it. And maybe it will take some more time, yes, and there will be really interesting groups of house magicians that we can refer to. Right now, I can't even recommend anyone particularly, and sometimes I stumble, and it seems, well, some sensible people, and then I look, they start to carry some kind of crazy. That is, they get there, let's say there is 60% of the crazy, 40% of the sensible, or there is 20% of the sensible, and 80% of the crazy. Here, and I won't recommend someone like that. I just remembered a good example about the relationship between freedom and development, because remember the same 90s. How many interesting things appeared right away. Some various musical groups, art projects, there, even the same technical stuff, in those conditions, when the state did not hang over its cast iron ass, so to speak. Yes, even to look at the movement of shuttles, when immediately, privately, the supply of everything necessary was adjusted on passenger planes. And then, slowly, all this was crushed, various structures, bureaucracy, everything according to the rules, and moreover, smoothly rolled into the ass. And they did it consciously. In other words, the same Gaidar just said, that private business there is a breeding ground for fascism, so they must destroy it. Here. In other
То
words,
есть
this
это
is
вполне,
quite,
вот,
that is, this is exactly
именно
the way
такой
of
способ
reforms that were
реформ,
carried out
который
in the
проводился
90s.
в
It
90-е
was
годы, он
designed as
был
much as possible,
максимально рассчитан
so
на
that
то,
no adequate
чтобы
class of
никакого
owners, except
адекватного
for the
класса
controlled
собственников,
oligarchs,
кроме вот
did not
олигархов
appear.
контрольных, не появилось.
Now, well,
Вот. Ну,
this is already, let's say,
это уже,
a
так
political
скажем,
topic.
политическая тема.
We also
Ну,
relate to
тоже
this.
соотносится
That
с
is,
этим. То
yes,
есть, да, вот
here we
мы
see how
видим,
those
как
who have power, of course, do not want to lose it.
те, у кого есть власть, естественно, не хотят ее терять.
And in order
И
not to
чтобы
lose
ее
it,
терять,
they are
они
trying to
пытаются
destroy as much as
максимально
possible any
уничтожить
sprouts of
любые ростки
progress of
прогресса
any kind,
любого,
whether social or technical.
что социального, что технического.
But since if you do
Но так
that,
как
then
если
yes,
так
then you will
сделать,
be
тогда
vulnerable
ты
to other
окажешься
states.
уязвимым перед
In other
другими
words,
государствами. То
yes,
есть, да,
there
тут
is a need to
происходит какой-то
maintain some
баланс.
kind of balance. But
Но
in
в
our
нашем
case,
случае этого
this
баланса
balance
здесь нет,
naturally
потому
does
что
not
Россия
exist
это
because
криптография.
Russia is a cryptology. Come on,
Ну да ладно.
Sleer, 230
230
rubles. Mr. and Magam, the first spiritual practices of people are shamanism tied to werewolf. This is for a very long time, even before the brain shrinks. Following the example of Warhammer, it means that they came into contact with the gods of chaos. Well, as we said at the very beginning, people themselves are a product of chaos. And initially, the contact with the gods of chaos was just very good. In the future, various pests twisted it more and more, and seemed to be distanced at the back of consciousness, which again is reflected in the whole mythology. I almost forgot what is the most important definition of the gods of chaos.
Какое вот самое важное определение богов
That's the
хаоса?
same thing in
Что для
Archimera
самого
as
Warhammer?
chaos
Вот
and strew, that is, real
хаос и
chaos.
стру, то есть хаос настоящий.
And the chaos
И
gods are
боги
real.
хаоса
They are
настоящие, они
real, highly real.
реальны, высоко
We're
реальны.
going to do
Про
more
это вот
broadcasts
мы
about
еще
this
будем
one,
делать
just to
передачи, как
explain
раз об
specifically
эпических
what I mean
конкретно,
by
что
this
я
topic,
имею в виду.
but
Но
they are
они
much
гораздо
more
более
real than our
реальные,
matrix, by
чем
many
наша
orders of
матрица,
magnitude, let's say, and in
на
fact,
множество порядков,
there are no
скажем
other
так.
gods at all, except the
На
gods of
самом деле
chaos.
никаких других богов вовсе и нету, кроме богов хаоса.
That is, what
То
is
есть то,
meant by
что
gods in human culture.
в человеческой культуре понимается под богами,
It's either you
это
know,
или,
like this degraded
знаешь, как вот
description of some god of
деградировавшее
chaos,
описание
that is, over
бога
time,
хаоса.
the
То есть
cult and religion degrades and
со
degrades to
временем
complete
культ и религия
unrecognizability.
деградируют и деградируют до полной неузнаваемости.
Or maybe it's just
Или
the
же
same
это
archetypes.
Вот как раз те же самые архетипы.
That is,
То есть
in the
вот в
person
лице
of the same ancient
тех
Greek
же самых
gods, they
древнегреческих
personify
богов,
archetypes
они
to one degree or
в
another.
той или иной степени олицетворяют архетипы.
And from the point of view
А
of
с
the
точки
gods
зрения
of
богов
chaos,
хаоса
there is
большой как
no
раз
big difference.
разницы нет,
What
о
we were
чем мы
talking
говорили.
about,
То есть
that is, between religious mythology,
между
and this is
религиозной
usually a race
мифологией и
about
вот
some
вот
Winnie the Pooh
обычными
there,
сказками
or
про
some
Винни-Пуха,
religious
там,
concept of some god.
как- какой-то религиозной концепции какого-то бога.
When we
А
explain
когда мы
about the
будем
chaos
объяснять про
gods in
богов
more
хаоса более
detail,
подробно,
you will
вы
be
как раз
able to
сами
understand
за
right
собой
away.
сможете понять.
That is,
То есть
this
вот эта
religion
вот
or this
религия
sect,
или
they are a
вот эта вот
reflection
секта,
of
они
some kind of god of chaos.
являются отражением какого-то бога
That
хаоса.
is, it's that kind
Кто-то
of
вот
thing.
того-то.
And apart from the chaos
А кроме
gods,
богов
there
хаоса
is
ничего
nothing.
нет.
It's
Просто
just
есть
that
человеческое
there is human
скудоумие,
stupidity
человеческая
and human
ограниченность,
limitation, which
которая
allows us to
позволяет
single
выделить
out
какой-то
only a
только
small one,
маленький,
small,
маленький,
understandable, most
понятный,
importantly, which can be
главное,
explained,
который
and
можно
which, after
объяснить,
each
и
retelling of
который
each
после каждого
generation,
пересказа
loses
каждого
more and
поколения
more, let's
все
say,
больше
the
и больше
original meaning.
теряет, скажем так, первоначального
In other
смысла.
words, it
То
is
есть
a
это
loss of
потеря
the original
первоначального
meaning,
смысла.
and
А
besides
кроме
the
богов
gods of
хаоса того
chaos,
действительно
there
нет.
really is no one. That is,
То
rather,
есть, вернее,
they
они
are not
настолько
so
реальны,
real that the rest
что
of all
остальные все
constructs of human
конструкты
culture are
человеческой
equally
культуры
unreal, let's say, and we will
одинаково
talk about this in
нереальны,
more detail
скажем
later.
так. И более подробно мы про это еще будем говорить.
Well, I
Мне
think it's
кажется,
possible
это
again.
можно опять же...
So, what's going on?
Происходит?
No, oh, no.
Нет, нет.
The Discord is
Подвис
suspended,
Discord.
but the ether didn't
Ну,
seem to
эфир
fall.
вроде не
A
упал.
daughter. Yes, I'm
Да,
here.
я
But
здесь.
something
Ну,
snapped,
что-то
and I look at my
откликнуло, а я
image,
смотрю мое
but it
изображение.
appeared.
А, вот
That's
и
it,
есть.
it's
Всё,
there. Yeah,
Ага,
some kind
есть
of glitch
такое дело.
apparently.
Мгм.
I just
Я
wanted to
просто
give an
хотел
example
опять же
again,
привести
like a computer
пример,
analogy.
как бы компьютерную
That is,
аналогию. То есть
the side of the house
бог
is
хаоса
that we
это
get
у
some
нас
kind of user at the
получается
computer, and
какой-нибудь
some are what are now
пользователь за
called
компьютером.
gods. So let me fix the
А
picture,
какие-нибудь
otherwise
то,
I
что
even
сейчас
have, we're
называют
friends a
богами,
puke.
так, дай-ка
The
я
picture has
картинку
fucking
поправлю,
flown
а то у меня
off.
даже Друже Маптюк, картинка нахрен слетела.
So,
Так,
maybe
может быть,
let me
давайте
step
я
away
сейчас
for a
отойду на
second now.
секунду.
Yes,
Да, давай
let's take a
сделаем
little break for
небольшой
5
перерыв
minutes.
5-минутный.
And now we'll be back.
Сейчас мы вернемся.
Stay tuned.
Оставайтесь с нами.
How's friend Duck
Что-то
here?
ключ тут.
On the spot.
На месте.
I want to make an
Я хочу
analogy
провести
here
аналогию
about the
по поводу
reality of the only real
реальности
gods.
единственно реальных богов.
In other
То
words,
есть
we can
можно
compare,
сравнить,
for
например,
example,
богов
the gods
хаоса
of chaos
с
with a
человеком,
person, the reality that he
ту
represents
реальность,
with a
которую
computer,
он
and the reality
представляет с
that we
компьютером,
imagine is some kind of small
а ту
program
реальность,
running on
которую
this
мы себе
computer.
представляем, это какая-то небольшая программа, запущенная на этом компьютере.
And those gods
И
who
те
are, as
боги,
it were,
которые
the
как бы
gods
боги
of the
текущей
current
реальности, это
reality, are
процессы в этой
processes in this
программе,
program,
более чем.
nothing more than. Well, you can
Ну,
find
в
inaccuracies in
каждой
every
аналогии можно
analogy,
найти
but for
неточности,
us,
но вот
the main thing in this
для
stream
нас
is
вот
to
главное
explain more or less
в этом
exactly
стриме
human delusions,
объяснить
and for the
более-менее
testimony of human delusions,
именно
the
человеческое
example is
заблуждение.
quite good.
А для показания человеческих заблуждений пример довольно неплохой.
But our streams
Но
here are why we have been approaching the topic of the gods of
наши вот
chaos for
стримы,
so
почему мы
long,
так
and in
долго-долго
fact,
к
we
теме
have
богов
not even
хаоса
begun to
подходим,
tell.
и на самом деле мы еще и не начали
We are
рассказывать.
talking about the gods of
Рассказываем про
chaos
богов
in
хаоса
human culture
все-таки в
after
человеческой
all.
культуре,
And first
и
of
в первую
all,
очередь
we
для
are
нас
interested in
интересен
analyzing human
разбор человеческих
misconceptions.
заблуждений.
And about the gods
И
of
про богов
chaos from our point
хаоса
of
со
view,
своей точки
we
зрения
explain
мы объясняем
exactly as
ровно
far as it is
постольку
necessary to
поскольку, чтобы
explain
можно
these
было объяснить эти
misconceptions.
заблуждения.
Of course,
Лучше
it would
это,
be better
конечно,
to
будет
explain it to
объяснить
someone
по-другому,
else,
но опять же
but
нельзя
again,
это
you
объяснять,
can't
не
explain it without
объяснив
explaining some previous
предыдущих каких-то
concepts.
концепций.
First of
Вот,
all, about truth
во-первых,
and
об истине
truth,
и
for
правде,
example,
например.
and about good and
Вот.
evil, as
О
it
добре и
seems to
зле, как
me,
мне
we have
кажется, мы уже
already more or
более-менее
less explained. But here, in my opinion,
объясняли.
at the beginning there was a
Но
question.
вот тут,
Yes, why are the gods
по-моему,
of
в начале
chaos
там был
kind?
вопрос, да, почему боги хаоса добрые.
Well,
Ну,
if you
если вы
consider your
считаете
life
свою
to be
жизнь
good, let's say,
добром,
and the
как,
development
скажем
and
так,
knowledge of
и
something new,
развитие, и
and as it
познание
were,
чего-то
the management
нового,
of your life, and obtaining
как
freedom when you have ownership of yourself,
управление своей
let's say
жизнью
so. And where do we
и
start this whole discourse at
получение
all?
свободы, когда ты имеешь собственность на самого себя, скажем так, вот с чего мы вообще весь этот дискурс-то и начинаем.
If you don't have
Если у тебя
freedom
нет
for
свободы на
yourself,
самого
it's
себя,
like you
то
don't
ты не
exist, you're a
существуешь,
slave,
ты раб,
a golem,
раб
and
и
a poor
раболовец.
mind.
Вот.
Is it good?
Добро ли это?
Well, I think
Я
it's
считаю,
good.
что добро.
Although the
Хотя вот
problem is that
проблема
it's
в том,
possible for golems
что для
that it's
големов,
evil, because why do they
возможно,
need
что это и
freedom?
зло. Потому что зачем им нужна
That is,
свобода? То
for
есть
them,
для них
it
это
is
связано как
associated
раз с
with great
большими
risks
рисками и
and dangers.
опасностями.
Although,
Хотя
I
вот я
think that if the
считаю,
Gegai
что
movement
если
wins,
движение Гайгая
then the
победит,
golem
то
will also be
големам
much
тоже
better
будет
than it
гораздо
is
лучше,
now.
чем
This is
сейчас.
my
Это
opinion.
мое мнение.
Мгм.
although of course we take special care of them, as it were, and we will not wipe their nose with a handkerchief. But at the same time, we will not specifically invent a variety of life aggravators. We will not force you to wear muzzles. And here's the thing, because for us, from the point of view of development, on the contrary, it's good for everyone to develop and get as much freedom as possible, and this is possible only with development, here. Well, then somehow take advantage of the opportunities, who is not. If we assume the golems, by the way, I take advantage of freedom, they start fucking each other. But this is actually the problem of their lack of intelligence. That is, it's already the same here. The main thing is that they do not run into our territory, here. And I consider this an unconditional good. It's even difficult for me to guess where chaos can be considered evil at all. That is, it is evil from the point of view of just such a perception of the world, when someone believes that it has already comprehended the truth in the final instance. Well, that's what is actually called dogmatism. That is, everything, and you dogmatize, and once comprehended, they do not change, and there is nothing new. We have all wandered in, we are the best, we know everything, and in short, we will conduct everyone to a single standard, because we know that it will be better for everyone. That is, dogmatism, in my opinion, is just pure evil. And unfortunately, modern humanity is constantly confronted with this dogmatism. Just like that. Well, because it's probably easier that way. That is, to decide that, fuck, you have already achieved creation, and in short everything. And you will only teach everyone how to live life properly. I've achieved everything I wanted, and I fucking need these changes. Let's finish reading the donations, and get back to the chat. So, Alex, 500 rubles, Guy Gaio, Vasya Vasan, 230 rubles, with commission coverage. Guy. Gentlemen are magicians, but how do insectoids relate, interact with the gods of chaos? That's about how insects are with people. They flicker and buzz around my ear. By the way, this is also a good example in the context of everything we have said today. The fact is that they are untrained insects. That is, whatever program is embedded in them when they are born, that is worked out on the machine. They have no feedback. They do not have acquired reflexes. They have all reflexes exclusively innate. They are completely untrained. Gentlemen magicians, it is possible to go beyond emanations altogether, cease to exist, and thereby gain absolute freedom. What makes you think that if you cease to exist, you will get absolute freedom? First of all, there will be no you then. Who will get this freedom if you cease to exist? And what does it mean to come out from behind the emanation again? It seems to me that you are trying to make sentences out of some unfamiliar but beautifully sounding words, in which the words are grammatically consistent, and perhaps there is some meaning, but what do you think? But I do not know how to comment on this, Druzhba Babyuk. And my daughter's friend, I will comment like this. Previously, we were asked much more similar questions. Now people have not learned to ask such questions. But still well done that you asked such a question. It apparently seemed to you in the subject, and I specifically said it, ask a question. Maybe it's like as it seems to you in the subject, but actually in fact, he is not in your topic, here. But you're still good here. The magicians, that is, are masters. But well done, but well done. But if you continue to ask pointless questions, there may not be such a positive reaction anymore. The Magi Lords, that is, our reality is under the many gods of chaos, or some kind of reality in which they live. It's more like here Kthul who sleeps and dreams. In a dream he dreams of all sorts of different entities there. These entities dream of some other entities. They dream of another, and another. And here's some kind of the smallest flea dreams of our reality. Here's a friend blowing here. Rather, such a description will be somewhat erroneous, but I do not undertake to criticize him now, because here, damn, there will be a lot of some such. That is, the person asked the question, is our reality a part of the reality of the gods of chaos?
частью реальности у богов
But you're
хаоса.
asking the
Но
wrong
вы
question.
неправильно задаете вопрос.
Their reality
Их
is much
реальность
bigger.
гораздо
But in
больше.
what sense is it
Но в
more,
каком
or
смысле
rather,
больше?
if we take absolute reality for
Вернее,
100%, and let's say
если
100% of
абсолютную
reality,
реальность
it will
взять
be
на
just
100%,
chaos 100%,
и,
then that's
допустим,
what degree of reality our
100%
matrix is,
реальности это
or
будет
rather our
только
echo
хаос
of a small matrix.
100%.
There are a lot of parallel
вот
realities that are
Какой
controlled by
степени
similar programs,
реальности
and
наша
what they will have a
матрица, вернее,
percentage of
наша
this
отдалённость от
reality.
маленькой матрицы, там куча параллельных еще реальностей, которые управляются похожими программами, и какой процент у них вот от этой реальности будет.
I'm afraid it's a
Я боюсь,
fraction of a
что
percent.
доля процента.
That is,
То
I can't
есть,
determine exactly which ones
какие,
by eye,
вот
but I
точно
hope
я
that
на
in
глаз
subsequent
определить не
broadcasts,
смогу,
I will
но
explain
надеюсь, вот в
approximately
последующих
why.
передачах я примерно объясню, почему.
That is, for
То есть вот,
example,
например,
indeed, if we
действительно,
refer to the same Pelivan,
если
where he has
сослаться
a
на того
book
же
about just
Пелевина,
this
где у
battle
него
of space civilizations,
книжка
it
по
is very well
захвату
shown
битвы
there. A battle is
космических
taking place.
цивилизаций,
Almost
там
everything
вот
is
очень
changing
хорошо
on a
показано.
global
Происходит
scale,
битва,
but nothing changes for
меняется
poor people.
в глобальном масштабе практически все. А у скудоумных людей не меняется ничего.
Now,
Так
this is a
вот,
good example, but it's
это
actually
хороший
somewhat
пример,
flawed.
но он на самом деле несколько ошибочен.
That is,
То
the
есть
point
тут
here
дело
is
в
that,
том,
on the
что
contrary,
наоборот,
anything can change with
у
us,
нас
but
может
just the
поменяться
reality
все,
of a
что
person
угодно.
is so small that she won't
Просто
notice.
реальность человека настолько маленькая, ну, что она не
For
заметит.
her,
Для нее
it will
это
be
будет
like
как
I
вот я
fell asleep
заснул
and
и
woke up.
проснулся.
I live in the
Жил в
same
одном
world the
и
next
том
day,
же мире на
but in
следующий
fact a
день.
lot can
На самом
change.
деле может поменяться очень многое.
And a person
А
cannot
человек
notice
не
it,
может это
because
заметить,
his
потому
degree
что
of
его
reality
степень
is small,
реальности
and
маленькая,
he
и он
immediately integrates
управляющими
into a new
программами
picture of reality,
перестраивается
with
в
control
новую степень
programs.
реальности.
And reality
А
is very
реальность очень
changeable.
изменчива.
That is,
То
at the
есть
global level, where it
на
is higher.
глобальном уровне, где она более высокая.
And here is this
И
idea that
вот
almost
эта вот
nothing in our
идея,
world
что
has
почти
changed,
ничего в нашем
except
мире
for
не
some little
поменялось,
things,
кроме
but
каких-то
everything
мелочей,
remains the
а все
same.
осталось тем
In
же самым, на
fact,
самом
from
деле,
the point of view of a
она
much
с
smarter
точки
person,
зрения вот
it may be
скудоумного
correct,
человека
but
может быть
from the point of
правильная,
view of
но
the
вот
gods of
с той точки
chaos, it
зрения
is
богов
heresy,
хаоса,
or rather it is not, but just
это есть, ну,
nonsense.
вернее, не есть, а просто чушь.
How can I
Как
explain
бы
this?
это объяснить?
There is such a
Есть
magical concept, which is also
такая магическая
erroneous, which
концепция, вот
believes that chaos
тоже
is as
ошибочная,
changeable as possible and as
которая
unreal as
считает, что
possible,
хаос
that is,
это
an
максимально
infinity of
изменчивая и
possibilities that are
максимально
actually
нереальная.
unreal,
То
but our
есть
world is real.
бесконечность
That is,
возможностей,
chaos is, on the
которая на самом
contrary,
деле
close to
нереальна,
100% unreality,
реален наш
where
мир.
everything is
То есть
possible,
хаос это
but it is
наоборот мир
unreal.
в 100% нереальности, где все возможно, но это нереально.
So,
Так
from the
вот,
point of view of the movement
вот
of Gigai
с точки
and the doctrine of
зрения
Gigai,
движения Гойгая и
everything is
доктрины
exactly the
Гойгая,
opposite.
все с точностью да наоборот.
That is,
То есть
chaos is as real
хаос
as
максимально
possible.
реален,
Yes,
да,
it can be
максимально
said
можно
as much as
сказать в данном
possible in this
случае,
case, if
если
compared
сравнивать
with
с
human
человеческой реальностью,
reality. It is not changeable as
неизменчив,
much as
ну,
possible, well,
как-то
somehow.
вот.
On the contrary,
Наоборот,
chaos
хаос
is a
это
huge
сверхпорядок
superorder,
какой-то
but our
огромный,
life
а
is
вот наша
chaos on
жизнь
the
это
contrary.
наоборот
Now,
хаос. Вот
if you change
если
these
поменять вот
concepts,
эти
damn,
понятия, вот
it can't be
или не поменять,
changed.
а в том
But the
дело в
fact
том,
is
что
that
вот
this
их
is
вот
what they
именно
are
этим
being replaced
подменяют,
with
когда
when they
говорят,
say that
что
chaos
хаос
is some kind of
это
ephemeral
такое
and unreal thing as much as
максимально
possible.
эфемерная и максимально нереальная такая
In
вещь.
other
То
words,
есть
they
они
change the concept.
меняют
That is, in
понятие.
this
То есть в
case,
данном случае
you need
нужно
to think
думать
exactly the opposite.
с точностью да наоборот.
In other
То
words,
есть это
this
наша
is our
вот
matrix. It can
матрица,
change as you
она
like,
может
and
как
the
угодно
matrix has a
поменяться,
greater degree of reality, by the
и
way,
у
than
матрицы
some
больше
individual
степени, кстати
golem.
говоря,
Yes,
реальности,
but the
чем у
chaos
какого-то
gods have
отдельного
much
голема,
more,
да?
that is,
Но
the
у богов
degree of
хаоса гораздо
reality.
больше, то есть
In other
степень
words,
реальности. То есть
in this
они
case,
в
they are the
данном
point
случае
of some
точка
kind of
какого-то
report.
отсчета.
Only here
Только
the
тут
problem
проблема
is
в
that
том,
it's very
что
fucking
взять
difficult.
это очень
That
сложно.
is,
То есть
to take chaos as a
взять
point of the
хаос
report.
за точку
Well,
отсчета.
damn
Ну,
it, okay.
ладно.
I hope I haven't
Надеюсь, я не
confused you
слишком
too
вас
much.
запутал.
Старье очень.
Другой
Yes, I do
Да
not
я не
even
знаю
know
даже,
what can
что
be
тут
said
можно
here.
сказать.
This
Этому
needs
нужно
a
отдельный
separate
стрим
stream to
действительно
really
посвящать
educate
по
about the degrees
степени
of reality.
реальности.
That is,
То есть даже
even the
вот
very
тот сам
fact that
факт,
people
что
wake up every time,
люди каждый
some
раз
information is
просыпаются,
loaded
им
to them,
подгружается
and
какая-то
everything can really
информация,
change,
и
and it will
действительно
seem to
может
them
вообще
that,
все
well, it was
измениться, а им
just some
будет
kind of
казаться,
dream,
что
but it has
ну это
always
просто
been
был
like that.
какой-то сон,
It's
а
an
так на
obvious
самом деле
thing.
было всегда, это же очевидная вещь.
But from the point of
Но с
view,
точки
it's
зрения
obvious
Для
to
нас
us.
очевидно.
But from
но
the
с
point
точки
of view of the
зрения
generally
общепринятой
accepted
картины
picture
мира
of
мы
the
несем
world,
какую-то
we are
шизу.
carrying some kind of crazy. It's just that we have more or less
Просто
encountered this. And here's really such a problem. When you find yourself already in some kind of reality, and you don't live for a couple of days, it seems to you that it has always been like this, but you just still remember that it was somehow different. Here, well, Pelivan in this case is the same, he does not invent anything when he describes this here. It's just that again, the point of view is a little bit, that is, from the point of view, I can play chaos a little differently. On the contrary, it is 100% different, that is, chaos is 100% real. Our Matrix K is less real, and the golems that live in it are almost unreal at all. Unfortunately, here is our daily life too. It cannot be said that we are very much real. Of course, it's more real than golems, but there is a lot to grow. There is a lot to grow. This is exactly why the Yaga movement needs contact with the gods of chaos, because with the help of this contact, you more or less understand what is real, what is unreal, what is important, what is not important. But living in these illusions, it is impossible to understand anything at all. That is how really I am some kind of cockroach. You run with these, with unconditional reflexes, back and forth, and that's it. You increase the production of ore. Junk dealer, 250 rubles. Gentlemen magicians, do I understand correctly that any entity can be awakened from chaos, starting from the divine, ending with authors' programs to fulfill their intentions, comments of their comments? Any as far as your personal strength, intention, and purity of mind will suffice. This too, we will analyze in more detail. Damn it, you know, I don't like it myself, that I feed everyone with breakfast so much that we'll sort it out. But I'm sorry, as far as we have enough strength, we will try to do this in the near future. Here. But you know, yes, the Matrix really resists. By the way, here is the ether of the present, and the day before yesterday, about the gods of chaos in human culture. I would say that the resistance is rather weak, that is, more or less it is possible to express all thoughts and ideas. That is, technically a little bit, yes, these are the breaks of the ethers, but this is normal. That is, when we begin to cut the very truth, the uterus, I'm afraid there will be more resistance. And it will be exactly at the level when you intend. In other words, we are not just conducting the broadcast, but we intend to conduct it. Let's see how much power we have. That is, you see, we almost every other day, and maybe even yesterday, we could have spent this second part. But it's better to have a little bit of strength. There were forces, they were not spent much. And when you touch on something that changes the very structure of the universe, because, well, apart from us, few people talk about it at all, that's a lot of resistance. So don't be offended, don't be upset, but still, I kind of hope that we will have time to sort it all out as soon as possible. Gentlemen magicians, the book of the Pauper demon Tom House is a separate book about chaos in your understanding? Well, let's just say that in Tommy Chaos, no matter how I was directly involved there, I don't know if Piper Demon deleted my articles there. I think I heard that he deleted links to me there. But that's where the matrix of egregores and its explanation is. I wrote it and as it were, this you know. Rather I was trying to play the simplest mind game, like the same socionics. So sooner or later, I think, it will be possible to have a more complex concept, more developed than the matrix and Gregorov. It's just that here, you know what the problem is, this is a time-consuming process, that is here. And most importantly, that is, there should be no pizza in it. That is, there is always some kind of process. It should be tested by experience and confirmation. But Tom House, you know, it's a pepper demon, it's more like this. You know, like Gorbachev, this is what it is, he's carrying something like that. It seems to be meaningful. It seems to be clever words, but in fact, if you think about it, there is no such special meaning. Poperdman is certainly well done, but he is a little smart, and he has a little bit of it. The roof, it seems to me, went, because of all these Ukrainian affairs, that he was there, in short, fled to Ukraine there and against the rage. In short, he was too fixated on it in my opinion. Here, and as for magic, well, I'll tell you that what I wrote, maybe it makes some sense there, and is also quite like that. I've been doing it for a long time. Well, you look like Gorbachev. That is, he's talking about something, talking about it, talking about it. There is almost never any sense behind this, in my opinion. Gentlemen magicians, I would like to know how the gods of chaos manifest themselves through and all, whether it is possible to encounter them or their manifestations there, and how it will differ from their manifestations in the real world. Interesting question. That is it possible to encounter the gods of chaos in Enola? Yes, as I understand it, yes. The first participant. Except as you are zero, you probably have nowhere else to actually encounter them. And in real life, you see, this is what I had such a delusion, at the first contacts, with the house gods. I think that once I encountered them in a dream, and it means that now they literally, almost tomorrow or in a couple of years, will manifest themselves in reality. But now I understand that this is of course wrong. That is, when the gods of chaos manifest in reality, it will be very noticeable. Here. And so, yes, only in Enola. That is, you see, since this is the deepest level of archetypes, there is the perception that is most not distorted. That's what we talked about in the program code. In other words, the gods of chaos will talk to you in the most archetypal program code. At a more similar level, closer to our reality, they will be overgrown with interpretations and translations. That is, your tonal, your whole psyche, if it has not learned to perceive at the level of zero, then it will distort everything too much, as an important tonal. In other words, you will get a translator, and until it comes to you, and you wake up in reality, that is, there will be some kind of, at best, hilarious meaningless bullshit. That is, like this. Gentlemen magicians, it turns out that the bestial gods of ancient Egypt are the closest of the degraded images of the gods of chaos who came from shamanism. I don't think so. Because before Egypt, there was also a good civilization about which quite a little is known. If you ask, by the way, about the latest achievements of archaeology, just recently all these completely incomprehensible civilizations were dug up there, which are very out of the current archaeological picture of the world, and they are all thinking how to embed them there. I was interested in something else, but what makes you think that shamanism is closest to the gods of chaos? Well, he is, I understand it, he considers it the most ancient. How? You see, that's what I want to say. It may even be impossible, but most likely it is accurate. There's just no evidence. It's just, that's my opinion. Of course, the gods of chaos, although there is no, that's what I rather know, but again it will be difficult to prove. In other words, these are such statements, that's how someone said, as he said. The gods of chaos, of course, were the root cause of any intelligent life at all. That is, fermento. Just because they have many such worlds, for them, it may have happened recently, but for a particular world, it may take tens of millions of years, for example. Here. And of course, the very appearance of man is also the merit of the gods of chaos. The details, again, some we can't just understand. Well, for me it's just obvious. It's like this logically inevitable, since the human mind itself, including again, is a manifestation of the gods of chaos at a time point, and when exactly was this time point, take it back, it will add up at all.
отнести ее назад тут сложно.
Well, that is, it is beyond any story at all, beyond even our perception of some kind.
Даже нашего восприятия какого-то, может быть.
Only, this
Только
perception can be synchronized
восприятие
only during contact with
может
the gods of chaos,
синхронизироваться только
and
во
then
время
it will be
контакта
more
с
understandable.
богами хаоса, и тогда это будет более понятно.
That is, you
То есть,
understand,
понимаешь,
this
эта
point
точка,
is
она
so
так
far away
далеко,
that most
что,
likely
скорее
both
всего,
shamanism and
ничто и
ancient Egypt
шаманизм,
are
что там
equally
древний
far from
Египет,
this
они
point.
одинаково далеки от этой
Maybe it's
точки.
all in a distorted light in some kind of way,
Всё это в
right?
искаженном свете в каком-то таком представляется,
That
да?
is,
То
that
есть
there were
вот были
gods of
боги хаоса,
chaos,
а потом
and
их
then they were
раз
killed
убили,
once,
из них
and this
создали
world
этот
was
мир.
created from them. By the way,
Вот, кстати
I
говоря, я
just
сейчас
remembered the
вспомнил
idea of what I said about the or production
идею
with each new cycle
вот
becoming
того, что я
more
говорил,
degraded.
выработки руды. С каждым новым циклом все более
Here is a
деградирующий.
good
Вот
example.
хороший такой
That
пример.
is,
То есть, да,
yes,
там гибель
there is the death of the
великана
giant
Пуруши,
Purusha, the giant and the
великана
world,
Эмира,
or
или
in
в Индии
India
там
there is a giant
великана
Purusha,
Пуруши,
who is cut
которого
there,
там
the
режут
world
одной
is
из
created
причин
from
это
him,
гибель
or the
Тиамат
death of
и
Tiamat, and the
создание
creation of the
мира
world
мира.
from her. And we
А
look
мы
at Jesus
смотрим на
Christ.
Иисуса
Everything
Христа.
is the
То же
same,
самое.
they killed
Убили,
him, and then
а
his
потом
body parts are
его
dismembered,
части тела
but they no longer
расчленяют,
create a
но
world
уже
out
не
of them,
создают из
but
них
as if they
мир.
are
Как бы
considered
они
artifacts, through which
считаются
some kind of
артефактами,
repeaters work.
через которых ретрансляторы
In
какие-то
other
работают.
words,
То есть
the
архетип на
archetype is
самом деле
actually the
тот же
same.
самый.
Or let's recall
Или
Neo.
вспомним Нео,
Yes,
да? То
that
есть
is,
Нео на самом
Neo
деле точно
actually
так же себя
sacrifices
приносит в
himself in the
жертву.
same way,
Из него
a new
создается
type of
новый
matrix
тип
is created
матрицы.
from him. Here, the
Вот.
same thing that
То
we
же самое,
said,
что мы
I said
говорили, я
about
говорил
Mitra,
и про
that
мир.
a new stage, the world, as if this very thing is being destroyed, is not being
Новый этап,
destroyed, but in this case,
мир
Mitra, as it were, becomes like Neo, like also a new version of the
это самое
matrix.
уничтожается, не уничтожается, но в данном случае Митра как бы становится как вот Нео, как тоже новой версией
That is,
матрицы. То есть
he
он
fought in the
сражался с
previous
предыдущей
version of
версией
the
матрицы,
matrix, loses, and
проигрывает и
becomes like Neo.
становится как вот
Yes,
Нео,
that
да,
is,
то есть
with the help of him. All
с помощью
previous
него
mistakes
все
were
предыдущие
protected.
ошибки
That is for
пресекли.
me,
Для
by the
меня, кстати
way,
говоря, что
that
Нео,
Neo
что
and
Митра
Miter are about
это
the same concept.
примерно одинаковая
That is,
концепция. То
he
есть
was bred,
его
let's say, by
развела,
this
скажем
gypsy
так, эта
woman,
цыганка,
yes, like
да,
Neo
как
bred
Нео
this
это
food,
называет, описывает,
yes,
да,
and turned into a new engine,
превратила
where
в
these
новый
mistakes,
движок,
with the help of
где
which
вот эти
Neo could
ошибки, с
god
помощью
and do
которых
magic
Нео
there,
мог боговать,
yes, fly there,
и там
fuck
магией
everyone.
заниматься, да, там летать, всех пиздить.
That is,
То
these
есть
mistakes
эти
will be
ошибки
taken
раз,
into account
уничтожить,
once,
и в
and in the
следующей
next
матрице
matrix, you will
ты
not
таких
make such
ошибок больше
mistakes
не
anymore.
сделаешь.
That's something like
Вот
that.
как-то
You
так.
can't
Уже
fly
не
anymore.
полетаешь.
Yes. And in these
Да.
ancient myths,
А
it
в
is
этих
reflected
древних мифах
exactly
это
how
именно
they
отражается,
dismember,
как
cut off,
расчленяют,
hand over
отрезают,
new
создают новые
pieces.
куски.
I'm just
Я же
saying
говорю, из
that
Иисуса
Jesus
Христа
Christ
и
and the
святых
saints are also
режут
cut
тоже
into
так же
pieces in the
куски,
same way.
тоже
They are
всякие
also put in the church as
трансляторы,
repeaters,
только они уже
only
не
they are
являются
no
частью
longer
мира,
part of the
а
world,
являются
but are
артефактами,
artifacts
через
through
которых
which
вот
there
их
will break
воля
through, let's say, deemergic
пробивается,
forces.
скажем так, деумергических сил.
Here.
Вот.
But in principle,
А в
the
принципе,
principle
принцип
remains
тот
the
же самый
same.
остается.
Here.
Вот.
So, this is exactly
В
the
этом
whole
как раз и есть вся
degradation.
деградация.
And here's the new
А новый
one.
вот,
Here is most
вот,
likely a
скорее
new
всего, новый
stage.
какой-то
It
этап,
will
он
be like
такой
this.
будет, то
That
есть
is, they will catch,
отловят,
put one little man in a
посадят в
capsule there
капсулу,
first,
сначала там
and then they
одного
will catch all the
человечка,
little
да,
men there.
потом всех человечков
Yes,
отловят.
already.
Уже,
So be
уже,
it. We are already
уже мы
watching it
наблюдаем
live.
это в прямом эфире.
To begin with,
Для начала всех
everyone will be
запрут в
locked
свои
up in their
клетки.
apartments. Exactly. And each new
И
matrix,
каждая новая
it's more and
матрица,
more
она
like
всё более
this,
и более
you know,
такая, знаете,
less
менее
interesting. There are
интересная,
less
менее
forces
лучше,
left in
менее
it.
сил остается.
The forces are
Больше
not
не
enough,
мало, а
but
нужно
we need to make these golems, which still have Cthulhu's blood, suffer more there, and allocate my powers here. And in short, we need to stop this thing. So I think the gig movement, that is, you see this one, that is, if this world is based on the corpses of, let's say, the gods of chaos, then well, let the gods of chaos resurrect to unite back. That is, there's a mate or someone else. Let the same Jesus Christ rise again, here to reunite. Let the world and destroy, and all will be united, and will be before they were dismembered. I don't think it's going to get any worse for us. Here, you know, comparing between this anal Lemurian computer slavery, that is so chipped, because any fucked up that happens, will still be better. Andrei Ka, 155 rubles 85 kopecks. Thank you. Please, junk dealer, 230 rubles. Gentlemen magicians, I do not know what the plug is, but messages do not pass to the general chat on the stream. I doubt that technical troubles. Along the way, at the beginning of the stream, I was sent to the ban for comments regarding the spiral image. I admit this possibility. If you suspect that you have been banned, create a new account for yourself. This is done easily and simply, and write from it, taking into account previous mistakes. So, CPR is 230 rubles. Mr. Magi, did I understand correctly that the gods of chaos are NAF, something that goes very far beyond the human tonal, other worlds and their inhabitants? Beyond this concept, I don't have the strength to understand. But friend Ducci, let me tell you now, so that there are no discrepancies. NAF is actually, the top layer here is what you asked a question about the gods of chaos, as I understand it. Yes. This is the topmost layer. The chaos gods are much deeper. That is, Nav is, well, literally a reality that is quite close to us. Here is such a Svedenia or semi-Svedenia. In principle, it is not so difficult to combine it with the real one. This is exactly what we were talking about, where these myths and archetypes exist more realistically. That is, here is where you can bring the assemblage point closer together. And there will really be all these fucking vampires and werewolves of some kind, magical orders. And that's what's in Pelivan's last book, where that's really where it went on the way I want to meet God. It's not hard to do here, and on it a little deeper, and the gods of chaos are much deeper. That is, there is a dream and a null. And it's through Anu that you can sort of notice them. Here. Not through the astral. Through the astral, there is practically none, that is. But these are already such subtleties, then maybe we will sort them out. In other words, I advise you to increase your match, that is, read all of our previous programs to better understand this. It's just that suddenly I have to retell all my streams once, and so, I don't remember some of them myself, that is, to clarify such subtleties. But in any case, Nafi is still such a layer, in my opinion, from the point of view of chaos, it is quite close to our reality, not very far away. Although for most it's really chaos, 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 that is, they can't even look further. Well, it's just that usually people manage to grasp the part of Navi that is closest to Java, because how else is it? Well, it's never chaos, although for ordinary perception, it can, and may be so. Gentlemen magicians, Martinism says that a person initially had the possibility of telepathic communication with God. Can this concept of esoteric Christianity be an example of human communication with the gods of chaos, which in earlier times was more frequent? I doubt it very much, because Christians mean a very specific phenomenon by God. Suddenly, you somehow became hard to hear. I can only speak louder. Okay, something's changed. Friend daughter, repeat the question, but something slipped my mind. Gentlemen magicians, in Martinism, it is said that a person originally had. Where does it say? In Martinism. Martinism? Yes. This is also the first time I've heard who he means, Martin Luther King. That man initially had the possibility of telepathic communication with God. Can this concept of esoteric Christianity be an example of human communication with the gods of chaos, which in earlier times was more common? First of all, you can still communicate with the gods of chaos. There is no special barrier. You know, there is no special barrier. The only obstacles are that there really is some kind of energy inside a person. That is, some have it, some have a lot of it, some have little of it. But it seems to me, well, at least the third or 1/4 of humanity, once or twice she may have the strength, that is really, as they say, to contact the gods of chaos. The only problem here is whether this contact will be conscious. That is, in a sense, you should not rush to contact them. That is why.
Именно
This is the main
поэтому,
reason.
именно вот
We
в
are
этом
not
главная
much on the
причина,
open air at
в
all.
открытых
We are
эфирах
just
мало
starting to
вообще,
talk about this
только
topic.
начинаем эту тему
In other
говорить.
words,
То есть
our
наша цель
goal is to
создать у
create
вас
such a
такую
coordinate sect for
координатную
you,
секту,
fuck.
блядь,
The grid, that's what I
секту,
say
вообще
sect.
говоря, секта.
A coordinate sect of
Координатную
meanings
секту
through which it
смыслов,
is possible to
через
grasp and
которую можно
accurately
уловить
formulate, in order
и
to
точно
concentrate on
сформулировать, чтобы
contact with the gods of
сконцентрироваться на
chaos. That
контакте с
is,
богами
if it is
хаоса.
not there,
То есть
then
если
there
ее
will really
нет, то
be a
действительно
large
будет большой
expenditure of
расход как бы
energy.
энергии.
That
Всю
is,
свою
you will
энергию
spend your
потратить
energy for nothing.
зря.
That is,
То
you
есть
need to
нужно
understand as much as possible
понять,
what and how you want to
с чем и
contact,
как вы
and
хотите
most
контактировать,
importantly,
главное,
well,
зачем.
but in any
Но в
case,
любом
that is,
случае,
even you do not need to
то
wait
есть
for us
даже
to give
вам
some
не нужно ждать,
explanations. You
вам
first of all need to
заниматься
understand who
целью.
you really are
Вам в
and
первую
what you
очередь
really
нужно
want.
понять, кто вы есть на самом деле и чего вы на самом деле хотите.
Because,
Потому
fuck,
что вот,
if you are in
блядь,
contact
если
with
вы
the
будете
gods of
контактировать с
chaos
богами
and at the
хаоса,
same
при
time
этом
being obsessed with all
будучи
sorts of
одержимыми
egregors and
всякими
programs,
эгрегорами и
then it will be well, at best,
то это будет
meaningless,
в
perhaps
лучшем
even
случае
dangerous.
бессмысленно, а возможно даже и опасно.
Here,
Вот.
and you can practice
А
knowing yourself
практиковаться
endlessly.
в познании самого себя можно
That's
бесконечно.
why, as it
Вот.
were,
Поэтому
do
как
this
бы
first of all,
занимайтесь в
and
первую
wait
очередь
for us to
этим.
create an ideal
И
coordinate sect.
дожидайтесь, когда мы создадим идеальную координатную секту.
Well,
Ну
since
вот,
I have this
раз
very
такое
thing,
мне это
as it
самое,
is
как
according to Freud,
по
yes,
Фрейду,
I
да,
say,
говорю,
a sect
секта.
here. We'll have to. We'll have to create.
Придется создать.
Yes, by the way,
Да,
I do
я,
not
кстати
consider
говоря, не считаю
Gigai
Гуэгая
to be
вот
a
именно
shoka
сектой
in such a
в
meager
таком
understanding.
полном понимании.
Well, here we
Ну
have,
вот,
by the
вот у
way,
нас есть,
destructive
кстати
sects
говоря,
and
вот
all that in this topic,
в
where I want
темах
to
как
touch on
раз
this topic in more detail. That
деструктивной
is,
секты и все
what
такое,
is
где хотел бы я
totalitarian
все-таки
ideology? What are
подробнее
sects?
затронуть,
And why is Gaga not a sect?
что такое тоталитарная идеология, что такое секта, и почему Гуэгай это не секта.
Although
Вот.
there may be a
Хотя
sect,
может быть
from
и
the point
секта.
of view
Вот
of
с
the
точки
East,
зрения
that is,
восточной,
it is a
то
classical
есть это даже
sect,
классическая
yes,
секта,
that
да,
is,
то есть
just some
да,
kind of
какое-то
teaching.
учение,
There it is the same. Well,
там
for
это
this it is
самое.
necessary,
Просто
and there is
Для
no
этого
Christian
надо,
one. To do
христианский
this,
нет.
you
для
need
этого
to
надо
separate
отделиться
him.
от кого-то.
Yes,
отделяемся.
yes,
Да.
that is, from a
То есть
Christian
мы
point
вот
of
с
view,
христианской
we are
точки
definitely
зрения
not a
точно не
sect
секта.
here.
Вот.
And from the
А
East,
с восточной,
yes,
да, потому
because
что
there
там
any
это
teaching is
подразумевается
implied
очевидное
there,
учение,
that
то
is,
есть
some such thing.
что-то такое. Вот.
And here's another
А тут
important
вот еще
difference between
важное
us
наше
and any
отличие от
sects
всяких
is that
сект,
we do not consider
то,
ourselves, you
что
know, to be
мы
the
не
truth in the
считаем себя,
last
знаешь,
station,
вот,
although we
истиной
will talk
последней
about it
инстанции,
here
хотя мы
and
про это
also
будем
about the
говорить,
truth.
вот, и в том числе и про
But the
истину.
point here is
Дело
not
не в
that the
том, что
truth
истина
is in the
последней
last
инстанции,
station, but that,
а в том, что,
fuck,
блядь,
we admit,
Мы
well, we
допускаем,
admit the possibility
мы
that in many
допускаем
things we can be
возможность, что во
wrong.
многих вещах мы можем ошибаться.
No, oh,
не,
and
и
it's
это
that we're
то,
wrong
что
about
мы
a lot of
ошибаемся в
things.
многих
It's
вещах,
obvious even.
это очевидно.
In other words,
То есть тут
there is
даже
no doubt about it.
сомневаться не
That is,
приходится. То
here
есть
we
тут
are just some part. That's what
мы
we have enough strength from
просто
chaos. Then
некоторую
we will
часть,
try to
вот то,
explain
на
and
что мы
embody in
хватит,
this
хватит
reality.
сил от хаоса, то мы постараемся объяснить и воплотить в этой
But of
реальности.
course,
Ну,
we can't
естественно,
embody everything, and we don't have a copyright on
мы
God.
можем воплотить все, и у нас нет копирайта
That
на
is,
Бога.
you will
Если вы
notice
заметите,
that all
что
these
все
sects
вот эти
here,
вот секты,
they all
они все
say,
говорят,
that
что
is,
только через
only
нас
through us you can be
вы
saved,
можете спастись,
everyone
все
else will go to
остальные
hell.
попадут
In
в ад.
general,
Вообще практически
almost
все
100% of them
100%
say so from
так
all the
говорят.
teachings.
А от всех
In
учений,
other words,
то есть
we
мы
don't
так не
say that.
говорим. Мы говорим,
We
что
say
вот
that you can
какую-то
know some
часть
part of it
познать
through
вы
us.
можете через
Perhaps
нас.
it will be
Возможно,
easier for
вам
you to know
больше
not
будет
through us,
познать не через
but by
нас,
yourself,
самому
some other
друг
part,
другу
or
учить.
the same
Или
one
ту
through
же самую
yourself.
через
It's
себя.
just that we think it will be
Просто,
easier to do it
как
through
мы
us.
считаем, через нас это будет проще сделать.
Here.
Вот.
And it's definitely easier,
Однозначно
because
проще,
one in the
потому
field is not a
что
warrior.
один в поле
Here in
не
this
воин в
case,
данном случае.
I also had such
Тоже у меня
misconceptions
были
there.
такие заблуждения, там,
I thought that one
я
person
считал,
could
что был
comprehend
не
some
один
concepts like
человек,
this.
каких-то концепций таких вот постигнуть.
Unfortunately,
К сожалению,
no.
нет.
In other words,
То есть
it
вот
is much easier to achieve
группой,
magical results as a group through joint
совместными
efforts.
усилиями гораздо проще, в том числе и магических результатов достигать.
It's just the way the
Просто
human
так вот
psyche is actually
устроена вообще
arranged in
человеческая
general.
психика на
In
самом
other
деле.
words,
То есть,
a person in a team
человеческий
often works
коллектив
better.
работает зачастую
Sometimes
лучше.
it's
Иногда
just the
как раз
opposite.
наоборот, вот
That's
когда
when too
слишком
big a
большой
team,
коллектив,
and bureaucracy
и
begins,
бюрократия
and all
начинается,
such
и всякая
nonsense.
такая
Then, on the
бесконечная,
contrary,
наоборот,
sometimes it
бывает, да,
happens,
что один
yes,
человек
that an
лучше
individual
может
can function better than a
справляться,
group. But here is a small
вот
group,
малая
here
группа
without
вот
any,
всякой,
and
и особенно
especially
если
if there are no
сообщества,
poor-minded and
групп,
heretics who
которые
carry
являются
all
такой
sorts of nonsense, then
гораздо
everything is
все
much easier to
больше
achieve.
продвигается.
We are
Нам
complemented
тут
here by the magicians.
дополняют, господа маги,
Martinism is the
мартинизм–
esoteric
это
Christianity
эзотерическое
of the Mason
христианство
Martinez de
масона
Pasquales.
Мартинуса де
It's the first time I've ever heard of it. It makes sense. So, let's read out the donations again. Junk dealer, 155 rubles 85 kopecks. My comment was no different from what I see now in the chat. I wish the moderators not to hammer the bands of the parade comments. Who knows how many people do not understand that there are no sensible comments in the chat. If a person does not understand that his comment is not in the chat, then, probably, his comment is not really needed in the chat. Big Black Strong Extra Long, 230 rubles, with commission coverage. Gentlemen magicians, think about it. Golkovsky has been talking about the upcoming anarchist revolution for the last couple of years, which should sweep away rotten Freemasonry. That is, to some extent, he is your like-minded person. Golkovsky has been talking about everything for the last couple of years, and our like-minded people cannot have him for one simple reason. Golkovsky is a pest, conscious, for money. Well, also a schizophrenic, but it's like that. It's just little things. A schizophrenic is only good for him. That is, he is not dangerous to society as a schizophrenic. Well, how can I tell you what he does? No, I mean, he's unlikely to take an axe and cut down his wife, his children or neighbors there, or that he will run around there and shit somewhere on the street and shit something. For me, it would be less harm than what he is doing now. Yes, unfortunately it is, and I used to think that maybe he doesn't understand something, but it is very noticeable that he is still a conscious pest. But he doesn't think it's something bad, you know. But to engage in sabotage, money is paid for it, money is good, so I am doing good. In other words, it seems to me that he has this kind of logic. It seems to me that he cannot fail to understand that he is engaged in sabotage. He is not stupid. That is, he is not the level of this Egger pogrom there. He is really a fool. He can do it for free. Although it's also like that, you know, they love money. Karakulin, 230 rubles, Gui. Let me now quickly read out the remaining questions from the chat, because we have already taken too long. Mr. and Magi, what role does an outside observer play in the chaos? Can they interact safely? You are most likely referring to the internal observer, about whom we talked on our airwaves. I mean, you know, this is one of those questions where I don't even know what to answer. And I know what to answer. You have the wrong coordination grid, the wrong coordination sect of just these meanings. That is, in fact, you did not understand what chaos is at all. That is, wait, don't ask any questions at all yet. Just listen more carefully to this program, the previous ones and the next ones. It's just that here you are looking completely the wrong way. It's better to wait. Gentlemen magicians, in the Warhammer universe, can the God Emperor be considered one of the gods of chaos, and if so, is such a future waiting for us in the current realities? Reread Ent. The God Emperor cannot be one of the gods of chaos. Why? Well, because on the contrary, he is a warrior of all this Yevpatoria, which he arranged. But no, and there is just a certain heresy, where just the Emperor is considered, well, that he will just be the new god of chaos, the fifth. That is, there too. Well, you know that. You already know that. We are delving into fantasy. That is, such a fantasy-level question. I just am not a special fan of this fantasy, and there it is. This is just for example in human culture. It reflects well in some ways, especially human society and the so-called order here. Or you can call it an unnecessary order, so meaningless. Here, I want to say that for such a question, Greeter Belif would have been subjected to exterminatus, I do not know, straight from the nearest inquisitor. Or maybe some inquisitor, on the contrary, would have helped him. There is a budget, competition will also be healthy. Gentlemen magicians, what purpose was pursued? Wait, friend daughter. You know what's interesting here, and why do they ask us this question? That is, they think we have such a contact with the Warhammer universe, we can come there, learn something or some benefit, That is, a person can move there himself, and that is, he thinks that I should worship the God Emperor as the God Emperor of mankind, or I should worship the God Emperor as the fifth God Chaos possible. That is, in this case, there is some kind of strange idea in general, that is, it is. Well, you know, this is such a secular, meaningless conversation, but we still want to avoid it. I'm just explaining to you once again that if you just want to make a fuss about nothing, then it's better not to fuck about anything here. In other words, it's better here after all, according to those. Come on. Not like that, because what is the practical meaning of your question? But here, it is really zero. Well, unless, of course, you're really not going to move your assemblage point into the Warhammer universe. I don't know. Are you seriously going to do this? So universe, it seems to me, is not too cozy. I think it's generally a weird place, that is, even if you have such opportunities, that is, you have reached such a degree of displacement of the assemblage point that you can move into the Warhammer universe. It's better to cut it short for now. Think for a couple of months before moving. Gentlemen magicians, what was the purpose of the creator of this matrix? Are other parallel matrices a direct part of it? Who are we in this context? In a good way, the matrix should be called the whole set of so-called parallel worlds, and the reality in which we are directly located is only a small part of this matrix. But what was the purpose of its creator? But apart from the production of, or in this case, no, I think, that is, it's me with this. You see here again. Let's just say, in our current understanding, options, one of the options is the most likely. In our current understanding, we can most closely consider that his goal and so on. And it turns out that in this context, we are the same or matrix batteries. Gentlemen magicians, the gods of chaos will appear in our world when the degradation of people reaches some critical point. That is, when the user realizes that the Windows is already completely buggy and starts formatting the screw. The gods of chaos will appear in our world when they deem it necessary for themselves. I will say this, Pajihausa have already appeared our world. Not all of them, but at least in dreams, they are quite themselves, so to speak. Here. And not just me and here. This is also obvious. This means that they have paid attention to it, and it seems to me very good, because the degradation of this matrix, that is, you know, there is no one to complain to, except the gods of chaos. What the fuck is going on here? That is, here it really is some kind of game that is already happening completely. That is, I don't hope for humanity here. That is, without the help of the chaos gods, we really can't do anything sensible, because the degree of degradation is really huge. That is, there is all hope for some kind of external intervention, that at least they will understand and report back. Maybe they will not interfere themselves, they will report somewhere else. I'll just explain that this may be the wrong word, hierarchy. Our degree of perception forms this hierarchy. I mean, yes, and to our degree of perception, it would be correct to say yes. The god of chaos appears. You look, it's fucked up here. Reports, it's fucked up out there. Here. And after that, they will come and figure out who is hooliganism and hinders development here, but is engaged in degradation, sabotage. Engaged in radish in the interests of Lemurians. By the way, here was the question, how do the Lemurians relate to the gods of chaos and battle, and chaos to the Lemurians? I would say that to the highest manifestations of the gods of chaos, they will take a salute from them, but at the same time, on average, they will lie to niches that everything is fine here, they teach people, feed, water. On the contrary, they help them with all their might. And due to the fact that they are simply a higher civilization, they have more chances, let's say, to finish publishing. And somehow this is the very thing. In other words, we also need to increase our awareness.
Нужно тоже свою осознанность
Otherwise,
повышать.
they will write there
Иначе они там
that they are
напрягаются,
doing this
что
to
они нам
us.
это самое,
They only wish us well,
добра желают, да,
life does not
жизни
teach us.
учат.
Here.
Вот.
And as it were, this can also be perceived. But again, I'm saying this from the point of view of human perception. Well, I explained how I see it in these words. Things can be completely different there. Well, that is, on a larger scale and beyond words. That is, here is the explanation. But on the other hand, that's about how I see the situation. That is, yes, that is. Why would infectoids really? Maybe they even sincerely believe that they are us. By the way, I have such a suspicion. I have said this more than once. They really think that they help us develop. It's just that we stupid will die from this development, so we need to fucking do something else, so that we don't die, but continue to develop, exactly in the sense that they see development. And we probably see development differently after all, at least, who of us is conscious? That's who of us consciously enters into the Gigai movement. And how can this be the maximum? Well, how is this the maximum? At least the opposite. At least complain to the gods of chaos. But since the chaos gods have already appeared, it means that his and Gai's movement is already working well. Here. Well, let's end our current stream on this inspiring note. While they're fucking begging, bye-bye.
Пока-пока.
Goi Geo.
Гой, Гая!
Gea Goi.
Гая-гой.